Here we go, back on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. So pumped that you'd press play again. 300 and something episodes going into 6 years of this, and now adding a daily Gill 1918 project. It's amazing. The coaches, the men and women who continue to plug in here to learn about coaches around the country and to receive value in our coaches speaking to them through the Gill 1918 project as well. So pumped for today. We're going to go, I don't go to the state very often because I'm a weenie, meaning I don't like cold, and I just assume it's cold 24/7 up here. We're going to find out more about that. Help me welcome the head coach of the University of North Dakota, Mr. Jim Vahrenkamp. Jim, how are you, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I've done this 300 times. I must be in a I'm too stressed or doing too many things. That I just realized that is the first time I have not introduced a guest correctly. Jim, you are the wise and wonderful Jim Vahrenkamp. I started that on episode 1, and I've carried that through. And I really, literally, just caught myself doing that. So forgive me, forgive me. Our longtime listeners will recognize that immediately. I can't believe I did that. University of North Dakota. All right, I like to. My kind of geekdom nerddom is I like to know everybody's mascots, and I think I do know. I can see that. Well, I know it's on your shirt, but I can see that it's a bird. You're not Eagles. Uh, are you like the fighting hawk or something like that? That is it, right?
And that's it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And is it true that it's cold 24/7, 365 in North Dakota?
It was 86 yesterday.
Holy crap, is that right?
Yeah.
I
I
was
would say no.
Yeah. That's interesting. I was in Dallas, Texas yesterday, and it was uber raining, just raining all day and like 45, 50 degrees. So that's amazing. It was 86.
86, dry. It was toasty for the 5th of May.
Yeah. Hey, and I've been to your campus. Yeah, I've never been there when it's not nice, like when it's snowing and stuff, but when I've been there, it's been nice. It's a beautiful campus. Like I can kind of see the sun shining. It's a really nice place there.
Tons of construction over the last couple of years, almost
Yeah.
$1 billion worth of construction. So
Wow. Holy, is that right?
yeah. They continue to do stuff. I mean, the current office that I'm in now, less than a year old, the building across the street where we were from the 1950s. That's going to go away. They're going to put it in a whole mining engineering, science technology building that'll be, about $200 million project. It's going to be incredible. So,
Dude, I was going to remark, your office does look different than what I remember going
yeah,
to. So
yeah,
I know where you were. I'm kind of picturing it. So you're across the street now?
yes.
Yeah, there wasn't anything there if I remember correctly.
No, there was nothing there. It used to be the old football stadium, Memorial Stadium, that was built,
Okay.
following World War One. And that building was, here from then until probably 4 years ago, and they took that down. The outdoor track is over my right shoulder.
Yeah.
Indoor track is across the outdoor track.
Yep.
So now it's all pretty tied together in a they call it an athletics complex.
Yeah. We believe healthy things grow, right? Like, humans, when they're healthy, we grow, gardens, etc. What is behind this growth? I mean, this is growth. I mean, $1 billion worth of construction, that doesn't happen because things are going bad.
No, so we had a president named President Kennedy who just kind of looked at what we're doing, and a lot of places do this. Higher ed definitely defers maintenance because you don't always have the ability to replace the roof when the roof needs to be replaced. And he looked at some of the buildings that we had on campus and said, the deferred maintenance building costs are more than what it would cost us to tear the thing down, build a brand new one, and finance that cost out over the same period of time. And so they've gone and they've torn down our student union. We have a brand new one of those, brand new business school, a brand new dorm complex. This is a brand new athletic building here. Across the street from me is another like $200 million complex that's going up that has, it's a public private partnership. We just put in a $3 or $4 million softball field this last year. The track is getting resurfaced this summer. It'll be done in July. The outdoor track, our indoor track is 10 years old.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
nice.
just a lot of things are really changing a lot. And they're going to tear down that building and put in new labs and stuff that have updated hoods, all of the newest of the new type of
Yeah.
thing. But to me, President Kennedy hasn't had, and he's moved on since this point. His background was not always in academia; it was in business. So
Mm,
I think he had a different, view of kind of how things get done.
yeah.
and did a great job, had a great a vision for what our macro was going to be over the next 50 to 100 years.
Mm.
And our undergrad and grad enrollment is just over 15,000, which is, I think, the highest or the second highest it's ever been in school history. So we continue to kind of attract and grow in a period of time when there's some headwinds in our world.
Yeah, right, right. Well, I think that's a great example you have there, President Kennedy. Leadership matters. He could have gone and just did the status quo, and everybody would have been happy as far as like the budget wise. Everybody, yep, yeah, let's do the roof when it's time to do it and all this kind of stuff. But he had the foresight to say, hold on, guys, wait, what are we doing here? Let's look past next year. What's 20 years, 40 years, 60 years look like? I think that's just a great example of what leadership is really, really important in our society, not just athletics and academia, but just in our society. And that's a great example of it. That's really cool. That's awesome. And the new president is continuing on with that vision and adding his or her own vision.
President Armacost, his background is, if you know anything about industrial engineering, it's thinking about process and thinking about manufacturing, all of that stuff. He was at the Air Force for 20 years, has his PhD sort of in that background in academia, and so operationally has done an incredible job of just continuing to work on things in regards to culture and right fit the people into the right positions that we have on campus, and just an incredible partner for athletics right now.
That's cool. I love that. All right. Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I try to do these
Yeah.
chronologically. And of course, I'm a tangent guy. So I just like to learn and ask questions. So let's get in our Wayback Machine here. Jim, let's learn more about you. Speaking of leaders, let's learn more about you. Where does track and field start for you? I've always assumed people are athletes, but we've learned plenty of times that lots of our coaches were not athletes. Where does maybe track and field or sports start for you?
If you go all the way back until sort of in 1980, probably 1987. I was born in 1983, so at about 4 or 5 years old.
Mhm.
I started getting drug along to cross country meets and track meets and basketball games. And that's just really what I thought was normality. Everybody did that. Every weekend you were going to something, everybody's dad coached and did that thing. So
Okay.
my dad was, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I think you're about to answer exactly what I was cutting you off to say. Why were you drugged to those? Did you have siblings that were in it, or your dad? You're getting to mention your dad, I think here.
I'm the oldest, and
Okay.
dad coached cross country, basketball, and track and field.
Oh,
So to me, I think there's two things when I think of people and their context. It's what is their nature, and then what is the nurture part of that, and the nurture part of that is your experience. So my experience was, of course, what's normal for everybody, right? Your dad coaches everything all the time, and you always have practice after school. And so I grew up, you know, going to practices. We literally lived across the street from the high school. And so if they were out practicing high jump, I saw that all the time. If they were out hurdling, I tried hurdling, which oddly enough is the same experience that our kids are having right now. We've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they just, they were like, hey, we're going to a track meet. And so they just think that that is perfectly normal to
that's
hang
right.
out at a track meet all day to try to hurdle, to throw things. Our throws coach has got a kid that's 2. I mean, he's got his own little weight that he carries around, and
No.
he's already doing turns and trying to throw that. So that's to me where that starts becoming normal.
Hmm.
Right? Like,
Hmm.
think about those kind of things. Um, and then, of course, you compete in those things as you go through junior high, high school, and those different things. And I had some success. Track wasn't my first love. It was just something that you did. I
Well,
loved basketball.
is that right?
I
Yeah.
loved basketball. I played football, basketball, and ran track.
Hmm.
That's what everybody did. I grew up in a small town in Wyoming, 224 people, just
Oh,
north of Cheyenne, Wyoming. So very small. So if you don't want to be doing chores on the ranch, you do sports so you can escape. So everybody
yeah.
does sports. And then
Yeah.
my parents moved. My dad went and taught at a private school in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Hmm.
And so that was a little bit different because we didn't have the ranching, farming background there. Most kids were from, the metro area, which is 100 to 125,000, depending what you include. And so I played football, did basketball and track in that environment, and was pretty good at football. Um, wasn't that good at basketball, was pretty good at track. but I love basketball. And at 6'3", you either got to be able to shoot it real well to be able to survive, which was not my forte. I just was pretty athletic and could outrun and out jump all the different people, and ended up going to college and pursuing track and field because that's just kind of where I fell in, you know.
So before we get to college, did dad coach you in basketball and track?
Dad coached me in middle school in football
Okay.
once, and I think that was seventh and eighth grade, and that was, for him it was like I get paid my whatever it is, $1,000 to go to all my son's games. So that's not a hard
That's pretty cool.
that's not a hard sell,
Right.
If you could get paid to go to your kids' games and
Hmm.
be part of your responsibilities, that worked out really well. No shade to dad. Dad wasn't a great athlete. I don't know that dad knew a lot about football, but he was there and I appreciated that. And I processed that at the time that he sat with the coaches up in the front. I sat with my friends in the back and we went to the same game he watched. He didn't really push me or tell me, what to do or anything like that. He
Right.
worked in a different area. But man, I appreciated that he went to those things.
Yeah. You mentioned he was a basketball and track coach though. So, but he didn't coach you in high school.
Nope. In high school, when we got to that point, he accepted a job as a math science teacher, then also as the athletic director.
Ah,
And so he didn't really coach a whole lot. Coaching hat came off at that point. Pro is you no longer have to be traveling with one team. You can be at all the sporting events, see your
right.
kids do stuff. I think he left being the athletic director after I think 2 or 3 years when we were there, and just stayed in that capacity until he retired.
Hmm. That's interesting. I love coaches' kids because, when we grow up, and, I'm dealing with this now, I have an eighth grader and a fifth grader, because when they start reaching their independence, I shouldn't say a lot of times, sometimes that creates the kids to push away from the parents. Like, oh, you're a coach. Well, then I never want to be a coach, but you seemed like this was just your DNA. Like from 3 years old, you're at a practice and at a meet, and as an 18-year-old, here I am. I'm at practice and at a basketball game, and it doesn't matter if dad is coaching or not coaching. He set the base for you, if you will.
Yeah, and I actually, in my senior year of high school, my friend kept leaving we had a study hall, the last period of the day, and he kept disappearing. I was like, "Hey man, where you going?" He's like, "Oh, I'm helping out coaching the seventh grade basketball team." And I thought, man, that's kind of cool. And so I started following him to that because I had nothing going on my senior year. We were just in school because we were waiting for practice to happen.
Right.
So I started following him in there, and there was one of the parents was coaching all this stuff, and great guy, Mr. Prufnick. He was passionate about seeing his son have a good experience. Didn't have a ton of background in coaching or anything like that. So I kind of started sitting on the bench for the seventh grade games. And then I started looking at it and be like, man, our practices are so unorganized. We're just like, what are we doing? So Josh, my friend, and I would sit down and start scripting practices minute by minute by minute. So, I'm just copying what we did at the high school level. And my coach played at the University of Wyoming. Had a pretty good background, I felt like, in basketball. So we started scripting practices, and Mr. Prufnick just kind of kept backing off and backing off. And by the end of the year, Josh was more the relationship type of person, and I was kind of slid into the X's and O's. And so I was running the whole practice and, like coaching every single game. We traveled to every seventh and eighth grade game, started coaching all of those.
As a
Uh,
senior, this is
yeah,
a
as a senior in high school.
18-year-old kid. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And
So
that
did,
segued into like I knew a little bit about something in track. So I would help anybody that I could.
all right.
Because we had one track coach. We're a school with like 100 kids in it. We ran in the parking lot, high jumped onto one high jump pit
Section.
section.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you kind of shift that so you could land on it.
I cringe at how often that is happening today in 2025. Dude,
Sure.
I go to
Yeah.
tracks. I'm like, where's the rest of it? Please tell me you're not jumping on that. I can't see that. Oh man. So where as an 18-year-old, and we'll keep moving here in a second, but stay as an 18-year-old, where is the idea of becoming a coach at in your mind at all? Or is this just like, oh man, I saw
Just
my dad
fun.
do that. Yeah, just fun. Not like, oh, this is what I'm gonna become at this point.
Man, and I will say this too. So I got a lot of encouragement from my high school basketball coach. Mike Purcell, he encouraged me, and I was like, hey, why do we take timeouts? And he was an
Uh,
educator too. And this is one thing that I think people who don't come from an educational background, I think, miss, because we as coaches, we're just teachers. Okay. Our subject matter is a little bit different.
right.
But man, I teach every day of the week, and my job is to not create perfection, like you said, but to help people to become critical thinkers and think about what they did. So, Mike just said, here's a couple different reasons that we take timeouts. You know, people are physically exhausted. We need to break momentum of the other team. You want to install something defensively, offensively. You've got so much time left. We're gonna, if you can script a play and come into the play, the other team is always going to be reacting to it. So, I don't know why,
Mm.
as this high school senior, I was like, perfect, that's what I'm doing. And it was fun for me. I dressed up on the sideline, run everything. And I loved helping kids get better.
Hmm.
And I coached the next year too, my first year in college, man, we flat thumped people. We'd start the beginning of the year where we're winning by 2 to 3 points. And the back end of the year, I still have all the stats on the internet here. I mean, we were winning by 30 to 40 points. We go through our conference tournament, just crush everybody, press every play of the entire game.
Wow.
Um, and it was a blast. My brother was also on that team as an eighth grader, and he was
Yeah.
a 6'4", 185-pound eighth grader. We had another kid that was 6'5". Both kids
Wow.
could shoot the ball. It was the first team that went to state. Started and they kind of, Mike Purcell, the guy that was there, was building a program where you know when I started as a freshman, we ran zone exclusively. We ran a 2-3 zone. We ran the flex. And the teams that we ran into that were more talented that could shoot the ball, we just couldn't beat them. We lost 5 games my freshman year. We lost 3 of them to the team that ran up, that was a runner-up at national, or sorry, not at nationals, at the South Dakota High School state tournament. And we lost to Rapid City Central, and we lost to Hill City. And those teams were a class above us.
Jim, how long ago was this?
Well, it would have been 1997.
I mean, you remember like this was you were involved. I mean, you remember the losses and who they were. That's amazing. Was your, I mean, spoiler alert, this is a track podcast and you become a track coach. I love, I'm not a big basketball guy, but what I am is I love passion, right? So like you talking about right there, like you could see, like you obviously are a basketball guy, like you love basketball. I mean, you're talking about the zone and all these kind of things. How was were you like that with track at this age as well? Like I love, it's fascinating to me when a coach comes on the podcast and they talk about, I asked my coach, hey, so why did, not in a challenging way, like in a inquisitive way of like a curious way of like, hey, why did we run repeats like this? And then the next day we ran this race. And you were like, hey, so why did we take, like, that's such a coach question, like a future coach question of like, hey, so why did we take a timeout there? Like what was your thinking so I can understand it and process it? I just love those because it's like, man, you're a future coach. I mean, that right there, whether you become a teacher or whatever you do, but you're a coach in that sense.
So
So I
you're
love that.
asking me, how's this tying to track?
Well, what I'm wondering is, were you like that with track? Are you,
Right.
well, I don't know what events you did, but with your events, and you said you had one coach. So are you talking to coach about like, hey, so why did we do this? Why'd you follow up with this? Are you asking those same kind of questions for track at that point?
Well, let's walk it even further back, because going back to that freshman year where we went, whatever it was, 15-5 in basketball or 17-5, the guy that coached basketball, Mr. Mulder, was a track coach. And so I went out for track, and there were 3 of us. There's Tim Marinelli, Jeff Woodstruck, and myself, and there was one girl on the team. And I was left. 33% of us made it to state that year. He ran 50.5 in the 400-meter dash. Um, he did a great job. He was an Army or Air Force brat. Dad brought him in. He was with me the whole time, but he'd been all over the place. And I was like, this sucks. We can't have a relay. And so,
Oh, so
I,
literally 3,
oh yeah, literally
not
three.
you 3 homeboys were together and you had the team.
No,
3.
three.
Oh, you did say the school was like 100,
Yeah, and
kids.
his
Yeah,
future
yeah, yeah.
wife, Renita Marinelli, or
Was
well, was also on the track. She was a triple jumper. And so I thought to myself, like, this is not a fun experience.
yeah,
And,
sure.
I knew enough about track, so I started recruiting.
Ah,
In my senior year, we had 45 kids on the track team between men and women. And I was like, guys, weather's amazing. Okay. There's girls on the track team. We're working on that. And you get to skip school all the time. Like, what's the negative here? And you get to choose what you do. You don't have to go and run a couple miles. You can sprint,
All
you can
right.
jump. Zero facilities. But I was recruiting my friends. And so by the time I was a senior, we're taking like a small bus and some other stuff to get people there. And we got better and better.
Wow.
My freshman year of college, Sunday school teacher is a track coach at the local college at South Dakota School of Mines and Technology.
Mhm.
I'm looking around at the landscape. I don't understand the recruiting process at all. Got private school coaches telling me, well, we're going to give you a 50% scholarship. And just, you got to come up with 10 grand out of pocket. And I knew if I went to School of Mines, it was going to be like 2 grand out of pocket.
Mhm.
I was like, no brainer. I signed a letter of intent to play football at the University of Sioux Falls, an NAI school at the time.
Yeah.
Bob was still the coach then. They'd won a national championship in 1996. Kalen DeBoer, who's currently the head football coach at the University of Alabama, was
Yeah.
first coach at the time.
No way. Is
Um,
that right?
yeah, and there's a ton of guys on that coaching staff that went somewhere else. And I was recruited by a guy named Rich Greeno. Raleigh Greeno was his brother, worked at the University of Jamestown. Was also a football coach up there. Just like people that were the guys back in the day. And I loved Rich. He was a really kind, incredibly benevolent dude. And I just ended up going where I was comfortable because everybody was trying to get out of town, out of high school. And I was like, I just got here 4 years ago. I don't know anything about where I
Oh,
live. I'm
sure.
having a great time. Got a girlfriend that lives in the same town. Talked to Jerry 2 weeks before school started. Said, Jerry, I'm going to go to School of Mines. And he was like, let's see if I can get you a track scholarship. He comes back to me a week later, gives me a $500 track scholarship, which lo and behold was one of the biggest scholarships on the team at the time.
Wow.
Had no idea. And I began that learning process. And so because I was in town, um, I became like they paid me to coach middle school basketball the next year.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
was the head coach. I recruited assistants. I ran everything. Nobody had any questions about that. I'd skip track practice to make sure that I could be there for my, uh, basketball games and stuff like that. I remember there was one we had a track meet where my dad, I was like, hey, I can't go to this basketball game. I need you to coach. And they went and they coached. We coached against Wall. We ran the zone defense against Wall. They were way bigger than us, could do a bunch of stuff we couldn't do. Lost by 6 points. That was the only team we couldn't beat. Next game I coached, we tried to press and try to be really aggressive, just got ran out of the gym, lost by 20 points. But move on to track season, and now I've learned a lot from Jerry. I'm starting to learn about throws. So I start working with this kid named Max. He's throwing 45 feet, 48 feet. We throw 49 feet. We go to state. He throws 52 feet. He's second in shot put. An
Wow.
incredible athlete. And I start having these incredible experiences. We got a girl named Alita Ugama that's on the team. We're letting her run the 800 every single week. And I'm like, I mean, are you enjoying this? Just having one-off conversations with her. And she's like, I'd like to try some longer races. She's an eighth grader at this time. And so I go and I talk to the coach and I'm like, hey man, let's put Alita in the mile this next week. And he's like, I don't know. She's so young. And I'm like, she runs 4 miles every day. It's going to be fine. Put her in the mile, qualifies for state, right? And so I'm like, hey, let's put her in the 2 mile. Qualifies for state in the 2 mile. Goes to state, wins the state championship as an eighth grader in the 2 mile. So like to me, like one of the things that I felt like people don't ever think about is first principles. Like, why are we doing what we're doing?
Hmm.
Not what is my opinion and what is the lens of my experience telling me, but like fundamentally, let's let kids try things and have fun. I
Yeah.
took Max when we went to the regional championship. It's like, man, you're pretty fast. I'm going to put you in the 100. Qualifies for state in the 100. So he went to state and he did the 100 4x1 discus shot put quadruple. I was sixth in the 800, or sorry, in the 100-meter dash. I mean,
Wow.
just an incredible athlete and continue to coach him. I think his senior year, he threw 58-11,
Wow.
threw discus 160, was a starting linebacker on their state championship football team, went on and played football. But suffice to say, the whole point of this story is you're asking about how does this tie into track? It's about
Yeah.
recruiting. It's about finding,
Yeah. Yeah.
identifying them, putting them into roles. And I was happy as a clam doing that stuff.
And starting to create your own philosophy, as you talked about, what are we doing this for?
Yeah.
Why? shouldn't the kids have some fun? So if they want to try the mile, let them try the mile. Let's see what may blow up and we learn and move back. Yeah, you're starting to like formulate all these things that are part of the skill set of being a track and field coach. Help me. I got a little brain fog. I didn't get home till 1 o'clock last night from the airport. Uh, so you're in town. So you stayed in town to go to school at the School of Mines and Mines and Tech. Is that what it is?
Yep.
Yeah. Uh, I heard for a second you're playing football or no?
No, I signed at the University of Sioux Falls.
Okay, there it is.
And NAI, nothing's binding,
Yeah,
So,
okay, that's
and
right.
I was like, man, if I'd had a different football coach, I'd be a football player,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
I had three different football coaches when I was in high school.
Mhm.
And my friend's dad was our football coach my senior year of high school, and pastor, maintenance guy at the McDonald's, also football coach, just there because his son's there.
Mhm.
And his son started ahead of me at running back. Josh was 5'4", 127 pounds. And at this time, I was 6'3", 185 pounds, probably the fastest kid in the school. And I played tight end, caught a touchdown pass our first game against Edgemont that year. And, was averaging about 50, 60 yards a game as a
Mhm.
tight end.
Yeah.
And Josh, we're playing Bison, tears his pectoral muscle away from the bone, gets carted off.
Uh,
Jim gets to go in and start playing at running back. And for the rest of the year, I averaged 133 yards rushing a game. We played second ranked team in the state. I had 246 yards rushing, three
Oh,
touchdowns, two block punts, and a sack. Like I'm having a great time. But we're terrible as a team.
mm,
We're terrible as a team. And so nobody's telling me you need to go to football camps to get seen, right?
right.
You need to send out letters and say, I'm interested in your program. You got to remember back in 2000, you don't have your huddle profile where a coach can go on and
Right,
look at all your
right.
film. So I was clueless. And the only reason that University of Sioux Falls is Rich said, hey, I got this kid. He's
Yeah,
pretty athletic. He high jumps 6'4" and runs the hurdles pretty well. Think he'd be good in football. And so, they home visited me just because they were both going on a trip together.
right.
But in a different world, if I have a different coach, like I remember we played Crawford, Nebraska, and as we're going through the handshake line, the coach like stopped me and goes, hey, where are you looking at going to college? And I was like, for what? I don't know. He's like, are you not being recruited for football? And I was like,
Right,
I haven't talked to anybody. I don't know. Were there scouts here today? I don't know how this works.
right,
We'd seen blue chips. That's
right,
not
right.
the world works. And I'm dating myself. I'm 42 years old, but when you talk about like blue chips and those things,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
context, we thought that's how recruiting went.
yeah.
I
It,
just
it,
had no idea.
we,
One
we,
of the guys that we played against, he ended up coming up here, Josh Lusner, and playing free safety for the University of North Dakota when they won their national championship. So like that was like my equal that came up here and played great D2 football, and
yeah.
I just missed the boat on that. Went and did track.
It's amazing. We've talked about this a couple of times here recently about the difference of recruiting track and recruiting other sport, basketball, football, etc. And a kid runs well, I was going to say if a kid runs, 1060 in the 100, but, we just had a kid run 992 for crying out loud in high school, which is just nutsos. But, a kid runs 992 in the 100. Well, that 100 is the same 100 that's on your track as it was down in the state meet. Like, kind of what you're getting in broad general terms. With a football player, yeah, you run 200 yards a game. It's like, well, was he playing against a bunch of kindergarten? I mean, there's a lot of
Yep.
different talent
Yep.
levels out there, so it's a little more involved. I assume, not ever having recruited basketball,
Well, a prime
football,
example is
etc.
this time my brother's an eighth grader and he's averaging 200 yards a game. Well, he's 6'4", he's 185 pounds as an eighth
Yeah, yeah,
grader.
playing against a
And
bunch
they
of
just
yeah.
kept pitching into the ball and he was pushing kids down and running in for
Right.
touchdowns.
Right, right. I love it. So you're doing track. You mentioned high jump. Are you doing other events or are you primarily a high jumper?
No, and in high school, I just liked to do other stuff. I had
Yeah.
that background of dad. Just hurdles was something like I was fast. I was the fastest kid, but I tell you what, add hurdles in there, and I've got a skill set nobody else has.
Yeah.
And so I hurdled
Very cool.
short hurdles, long hurdles, high jump. My senior year, I won discus at one track meet that we went to. It was
Yeah.
just a small track meet. So dabbled in a bunch of stuff. My freshman year of college, I start working with Jerry. And he's like, you're going to do the pentathlon.
I,
Jerry's like
I was wondering if
five,
there's any
six,
multis here. Yeah.
yeah, 5'6", 5'7" guy that ran at Adams State back when they were NAI for Joe V. Hill.
Oh,
And
yeah. Nice.
somehow Jerry has segued that into he's a coach at a small school. So he coaches throws, he coaches jumps, he coaches hurdles. He's also the distance coach. And, great friends with Jerry. So I'd do whatever Jerry said.
Right.
And first meet, I went out and qualified for nationals for NAIA. Had no clue what I was doing. But Jerry got me to jump 6'7" my freshman year, 6'6.5". It's a centimeter off with the conversion.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, First time I long jumped, I jumped 20'11". My PR in high school was 15'11".
yeah,
So I had that was one time. I jumped 15'11", 12 foot at the next meet. And I was like,
yeah,
not doing this anymore. Because we self-select into what we're good at, and we get this positive feedback loop.
yeah.
So
Right. So, what did you go into college thinking as far as like a major and I'm going to become an
no,
engineer, a doctor? What did you think going in?
no thinking.
No,
Just
no,
on autopilot. On autopilot going, and my
autopilot, like
just
you're
going to
not
college. Just going to
really
college.
now.
No clue
Now,
what I'm doing.
now, your dad is an educator.
Yep.
He's a teacher. Um, I don't know what mom did, but you seem to have like pretty good examples in front of you. And yet I'm hearing kind of a little aimlessly, like I'm just
Yeah,
going,
but I
I go to
but I
college, I'm going to
wonder
college.
about that. My parents are going to be up here in 2 weeks. I'll ask them about that.
Hmm.
But like, I think they very much so allowed us to make our own path.
Oh, very cool.
Very unique, right? Well, we live in a day and an age where I don't like this is totally different with my kids. Other parents don't let their kids get out of arm reach.
Right. Yep.
I do appreciate my neighbors, the Jacobsons. I'll see them in the backyard and be like, "Have you seen my kids?"
Yeah.
I'm like, they're down the street with my kids, and he's like, "Ah, all right."
Yeah.
But that's very unique. And so at that time, the life that I grew up with in rural Wyoming was I left the house at 8 a.m., came back for lunch. This is when I was 7 to 12,
Right.
5 years. Left the house then after lunch, came back when the sun started to go down. Nobody ever asked any questions. I was just
Yeah.
out in holes, building forts, you know,
Yeah.
hunting birds, doing stuff like that with my best friend. And so, like, my dad grew up in rural Nebraska the same way. And so I don't know. Certainly, his lens of experience was you'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
I did a lot of figuring out. My freshman year of college was enroll into School of Mines and Technology, and your options are industrial engineering, civil engineering, electrical engineering, computer
Right.
science, mining. There were no degrees. There's no English. There's no math or history. There's no education.
Yeah,
So,
that's what's interesting. You didn't go to a liberal arts where it's like, oh, okay, there's 100 majors I can
no.
eventually find myself into. You're going to a very specific high level academic school here.
And I was so lost my first year,
Mm.
and my parents allowing me to live my life. I went in, I promptly failed trigonometry.
Oh,
And I went to my
what
advisor.
dad taught math, didn't he? Is that what you said?
Yeah, he let me make my
Oh,
own way. As soon as I was, and he taught me in two different math classes in high school. As soon as I got out of high school, my parents were like, "You do you. I'm not checking on you." So you know what that means? You don't do anything. I was like, "This is
right.
amazing. I never have to do anything. Nobody cares if I turn in homework. Dad doesn't care. Nobody
Right.
asks." I got a 24% on my final. I remember that. And
Yeah.
I remember sitting in my parents' living room. It's kind of snow's coming down. It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon before I got to go to track practice. And I've looked at my grades and just being emotional and crying and just being so embarrassed,
Hmm.
and just being like, I knew I was responsible for it. But, everybody else on the team was like, Burgoyne, she's a terrible teacher. It's her fault, yada, yada. So they perpetuated the lie that it was somebody else's fault. So I went to
Hmm.
my advisor and they're like, cool, get you right back in trig. We're going to pass that. I finished that semester with a 2.27. I took some other classes where it was okay. And she's like, well, you take trig, then we'll get you into calc one, calc two, calc three. We'll do differential equations. In my head, I'm going, what are you talking about?
Ugh.
Like, I can't pass trig. Got into trig the next semester with a different professor, tried a little harder. Right before ad drop, he's like, "You're failing my class." I was like, "Yeah, I know. I'm aware." So I dropped that class. I made sure I had enough credits. One of them was history. One of them was reading science fiction, which was incredibly popular at School of Mines. It was 38 dudes and one girl in this class that I was. And man, I'm like, I had history, I had English this semester. I was like, I'm happy as a clam can be, and I'm starting to get B's, and we travel for track meets, and School of Mines has got an outdoor track and the armory or the indoor gymnasium, which is a small basketball court where we high jumped and
Hmm.
you didn't long jump, and we hurdled diagonally across the big gym upstairs where you could do 3 hurdles.
Yeah.
And so we started going to track meets where other people had indoor facilities, and I'm looking around going, you guys get to practice indoor here every single day. And so that along with the academic piece of it precipitated me looking somewhere else. And my
Mm.
event coach, Royce Wertzer at the time, and I think he may still be at Rapid City Central coaching kids there. He was like, "Hey, I went to the University of South Dakota." I was like, "Yeah, I know. I've seen their indoor facility." At the time, no one had anything like it. You got 5,000 permanent seats, or sorry, 10,000 permanent seats. You've got a 200-meter, 8-lane indoor flat track with a 120-meter straightaway, and it was fun to be able to jump in there. And like every time we went there, I was like, "Man, they're so loud." There's this team element, and at School of Mines, there were 14 guys and there were 3 girls.
Hmm.
And I just thought to myself, I was like, I'm really missing something there. And so me and 2 other teammates transferred there at the end of the year.
You know, Jim, as you're telling your story, it's striking. You always have an extremely good memory. Again, you're talking about past games and the offenses you ran and what game your dad coached and you didn't. So I mean, obviously, you kind of almost like have a steel trap up here. I tend to think that lends itself to people who are good academically. I don't necessarily want to say that sounded like you struggled academically because it doesn't seem like it was an intelligence thing. It just seems, and I don't want to call
Effort.
it lazy. Yeah, effort. Yeah, but not lazy. Like I'm not catching. You're coaching middle school basketball and doing it well. So lazy people don't do that. You know what I'm saying? So it's not lazy. It's just like this. It's just weird. Before hearing your story, I don't know that I would have been able to say that someone who doesn't show effort is not lazy. Like I said, oh, that's an automatic together. And yet here you're kind of proving that's not true. It's just so interesting to me.
To me, I think it's a little bit of aptitude and interest,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's like what we love, we pour ourselves into. And
Yeah.
so I always tell my kids, and they're like, what should I do? And it's, as far as what should I do with my life, what classes should I
Mm-hmm.
take? And it's
Mm-hmm.
and to me, most of us in the academic world are so tied to, I want to do international trade law, so I got to get an international trade degree
Mm-hmm.
before I go and get my law degree.
Right.
And my advice to those people is like, you need to find the people in your industry. You need to network, you need to clerk, you need to do internships, and you need to find what you're passionate about. Don't chase money, chase what you're passionate about, and the money will follow. If you can pour yourself into something 60, 70 hours a week and come home and not feel used up, like to me, you found your calling in life.
Bro, who are you? And what I mean by that is I, I resonate so much with that advice. But you hear the exact opposite. What you just talked about. Oh, you want international law? Okay, well, here's the path. It means you need to do this, this, and this. And maybe it's because of similar to how I raise my kids today. But also maybe it's it even more resonates with me because I've done 300 of these interviews now, and everybody's a very high successful coach who's on this podcast, and they all get to where they are in different ways. But no one has gone and said, okay, well, I knew I wanted to be a coach, so I know I needed to go and study kinesiology, and then I know I needed to do a GA at this school, and then I know I needed to get this certification. Like it was like, oh, I liked English, so I went and studied English, and then found out that I could coach, and so I started volunteer. Everybody has such different paths that all begin with passion. That all begin with like I really like the sport, or I really like helping young people. Those are the passions that help guide them to eventually become coaches. And I just that's just striking to me that you have that advice to your kids today. When I say your kids, and then also your athletes today, because I think it's just spot on. I literally just had a conversation with one of the, I don't want to give it away too much, but one of the top athletes in college right now for our sport, and they're struggling. They're at their last year of college, and they're like, man, I don't know if I should go do this grad thing or should I do this, and track plays a part in what their decision is. And I was like, you know what? You're so young, first of all. It's like you're 20, 21. I think they were 21. You're 21. I was like, I'm 48. So I'm 2+ your lifetimes. I go, life right now should be a buffet. Go taste. You like this? Go try that. You like this? Go try that. And here's the thing I think we do a disservice with our kids. And I love how your parents did not do this is we seem to think to tell young people, you better have it all together by 22. Like you better know what you're going to be, where you're going to live, what job you're going to, your profession, your ladder up to wherever you eventually want to be. And it's like, dude, at 22,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I don't know. I didn't know anything at 22.
I think one of the things too, I think a lot about this in regards to what are my skill sets, right?
Hmm.
Everybody thinks the skill sets you need are business, you need to know economics, accounting,
Hmm.
management. There are a lot of like really soft skills, like
People.
being able to struggle.
Yeah.
Like if you've never dealt with adversity,
Hmm.
and man, my parents just threw me in the deep end and said,
Yeah.
figure it out. I don't know what you're going to study. Go figure it out. I'm not going to answer
Hmm.
the questions for you. And going back to the story, I struggled a lot,
Hmm.
and I struggled and struggled and struggled. And I had my favorite part of the story. I had this incredibly kind girlfriend at the time who got into college, was an hour away. She was playing college basketball. I'm running track. And I was blaming everybody for my failures in math. I got into college algebra once I got to South Dakota, failed that. I dropped it or I failed. I was smart enough not to get another F on my transcript. And the next semester, I'm like, I take it again. I hear this is a good professor. And she just kind of was like, the problem is you, right? And I just was, I never wanted to take responsibility, but it was incredible to have, at this time, I'm 20 years old. She's 18 years old. She's a freshman. I'm a junior. And she just straight up said, you're the problem. And I wanted to see her. So part of her requirement for us to see each other was I would come and she would go through my math homework. And she was in Calc 2 at this
Oh,
point,
yeah,
freshman in
yeah.
college. And I'm taking college algebra. And she would check my work. And I'd had a dad as a math teacher. I knew I could just brute force it. I could start with the answer and work backward. And man, she made me show all the work for it. She never took her foot off the gas.
Huh.
And I've been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder when I was in second grade. Super high energy,
Mhm.
which precipitated me drinking a cup of black coffee before I went to school every morning, starting in second grade.
No.
Oh, it's incredible. It's a stimulant. Caffeine's a stimulant. So is Ritalin. Any of those drugs that they use are a low-level stimulant, and caffeine's a natural stimulant.
Yeah, but I can't picture a second grader. No cream or sugar, just black.
just just sitting at and I'd sit at the table
Reading your Wall Street Journal.
and they were like, you are drinking this cup of coffee before you go to school. And coffee tastes terrible. You know how kids got a sugar tooth. I'm sitting there drinking this bitter, bitter drink.
Yeah, I'm tired of
And it
pretending
was
that coffee tastes good. It does not.
and it
It's
was
true.
Folgers instant coffee too. It
Oh,
wasn't any gourmet stuff. It was stirring some of those dried crystals and away
oh.
you go. And so I had always blamed things on that.
Mm,
I was like, well, I'm not dumb. I just have ADD. It's a
mm,
crutch. She kicked that crutch out from underneath my arm and
mm,
held my face to a mirror and just said, this
mm,
is who you are. And it was
mm,
incredible because no adult, I would never allow an adult to do that, right?
mhm,
Somebody that
mhm.
I cared about, whose opinion I cared about, who I cared about as a person, who I wanted to
Right.
spend my time around, held my feet to the fire. And I got a C in college algebra.
Dude, nice.
Yeah. Lo and behold, it's amazing. You do some homework and we broke up in that over Christmas break and I got into
Oh,
trigonometry. I got an 89.4 in that class.
dude.
Sitting at Iowa State, we're at a track meet, and I'm sitting in the stands. I'm like doing homework, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm just like all those nerds at school of mine.
Yeah,
They would
who
do their
like this is the
homework.
real who are you?
They
Yeah.
would do their homework up, in the stands and be laughing. They'd be going through the through the media guide, be like, "Look at this kid, interdisciplinary sciences. That's not even a major. This kid doesn't, So I'm starting to pass things right and take
Yeah.
responsibility for who I am. I did the other thing. I started studying business when I went to South Dakota, and accounting weeded me out because I got
Okay.
seeing
Yeah.
that it's all
Yeah.
process oriented. You got to do your homework. You
Yeah. Yeah.
going on. And I finally am just kind of aimlessly, looking through majors. I have been doing well in the history classes I've taken. So let's do history education.
Huh.
English classes, those are pretty easy. I can write, I'm good at that. Let's do a double major. And so I ended up doing that. I started taking some coaching classes, took coaching football, coaching basketball, care and prevention of athletic injuries, psychology of coaching, which was my favorite class.
Huh.
Man, that guy he was the defensive coordinator on the football team. His name was Mike, an incredible guy. Um, just an incredible mind,
Huh.
in the way that he related to people. And I learned so much about psychology of coaching. There are some people that get the book, you get some notes, they basically read the book to you, but this guy like put the book down and spoke to you every single class. And it was so easy to sit there, with me and my other coaching friends and I just soaked up so much knowledge
Hmm.
from that guy.
I love that you had that girlfriend at that time of your life. Sometimes, not sure, Jim, where you are necessarily in your walk in faith, but sometimes people are put in our lives that sometimes we look back like, man, why did I ever, or how did that ever? And it's like, you know what, you needed that person, or might have been the reverse, by the way. They could have needed you at that specific time. So I love that you had that person of like, almost that, you know, proverbial slap in the face of like, hey, dude, it's you. You're the problem here. And what's interesting is, there's two sides of that coin. So she said that, and that was probably the right thing at that time. But you had to be able to accept that as well. Like you could
And I
easily push.
probably would not have been ready for that until that point.
Yeah, or from another person even. Like if mom
Yeah.
would have said, "Hey,
Oh,
Jim,
100%.
you're the problem." Like, yeah, mom, you don't understand. Sorry, mom, not this time. You don't understand this. This teacher, blah blah blah, all these other things. That was the right person, the right time, saying the right thing to you, and then you had to be open to like, oh crap, man, maybe she's right, and then do something about it after that. So that's really cool. So you're at South Dakota. I love how, if you're not watching on YouTube, when he was talking about aimlessly, it almost looked like you were aiming though, like you're trying to zero in on where am I? What I got to get a major. Like you do know that's an end goal. Like okay, I got to get a degree, so I got to eventually pick something. And it's like okay, well, yeah, no math's no good. Okay, all right, over here, oh, history's pretty good. Okay, oh, I write pretty well. You kind of honing in on where that aim is going. So what did you end up getting a degree in then?
I got a degree. I got a double degree in history and English.
History
I
and
was a
English.
class away from a minor in business, a class away from a minor in coaching. I graduated with 168 credits. He needed 128 credits to
Oh,
graduate.
geez.
Um,
When you
I,
finally decided on that history and English, was it, did you have the, I don't know if foresight's the right word, did
I
you
was
have the,
trying to find a major that would allow me to coach
oh, okay, that's what I was wondering. Like,
full
were you
time.
seeing like, okay, this, because I can coach if I had this degree, or was it just like, it gives me a degree and I get out of college? I'm not hearing you really like trying to get out of college. Some people are
No,
like, I don't ever want to be here again. I just get me a degree and I'll get out. You don't sound like that's necessarily
no,
true.
no. And I like from the moment I got into school, I looked at the people that had coached me. There was a guy who was a CPA, Casey Peterson, in Rapid City, who was my football coach. He played football at South Dakota State. He and his father, Stanley Peterson, were our coaches the second 2 years that I was in high school. And he was a CPA, and I was like, maybe I can be a business owner and
Hmm.
I'll coach on the side because I can dictate my own schedule.
Right, right,
And I
right.
was thinking of ways, I was like, I know how much mom and dad make. Maybe I'd like to make a little bit more money than that and have the ability to come and go as I please
Hmm.
and coach. And so I
Hmm.
was always looking for a way to get into coaching.
You say that, but maybe caveat, you correct me here. In college you were, because when I asked you in high school senior, I was like, hey, what are you, where's coaching? You're like, oh yeah, it's not necessarily in my head. But in college, it seems like almost like this, like those slider buttons for a light. Like it doesn't seem like there was a light switch. Like you took that psychology for coaching class. It was like, oh yeah, this is it. It wasn't that. It feels like this was more like the slow burn of like, oh okay, yeah, coaching. Oh look, this guy's a business owner and oh okay, yeah, this is where I'm going to end up. Is I'm going to be doing something that allows me to coach. It seems like it kind of slow burned up to that.
I think that experience coaching middle school basketball lit a fire.
That seems huge. Yeah. That's certainly a core part of you. Yeah.
Never even thought about it. And I'll tell you what, you know, my background is so my parents worked. They just retired 2 years ago.
Oh, good for them.
We when we moved to South Dakota, they worked at a private Christian Protestant high school. And so everything kind of revolved around the church and like missionary work or working within a church, being, whether it's a youth counselor type of scenario. Those were the things that, because I went to that school, everybody was hyper focused on going to small, private, liberal art, evangelical colleges.
Hmm.
And so everybody was getting into mission work or being a youth pastor or doing something in that field.
Hmm.
So there wasn't a big emphasis on get a business degree. There wasn't a big
Hmm.
emphasis get a history degree,
Right.
teach somewhere else. And it was I would chalk that up to not really knowing where I needed to be.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the coaching piece of it, the people that came in and coached weren't the high school teachers, because the base salary at Rapid City Christian back then was like 18,500. There's nobody coming out of high school or out of college coaching high school at that level. It's mostly people uh, within evangelical Christian
Hmm.
circles
Hmm.
who had done other things, who could afford to kind of early retire
Right.
and get into it. And my dad took an early retirement buyout in Wyoming, very disenfranchised with the experience. When I was in school, I remember Roger Prado was in seventh grade, brought a 357 to school and was showing everybody. He's like, oh man, check
It's
out my piece.
Wyoming.
Yeah, check out my piece, And I
Hmm.
was like, I don't know. Arthur Lira brought brought a handgun to school. It was a pellet gun, but still, like in the same year, you got two different kids bringing handguns to school. One of the other kids at the high school jumped. I remember the PE teacher as he was leaving school. Big physical altercation. I think my parents got
Oh, jumped him.
jumped him, like, yeah, try to take him out. And I think there was a period of time in the 90s where there certainly was a lot of sentiment that society was going to hell in a handbasket. And the
Hmm.
concern was, which it seems crazy now, having lived in Atlanta and having lived in Charlotte, big metro areas,
Hmm.
and looking back to a town of 3,000 people in Wyoming and thinking like, we didn't have gang problems. We didn't
Right.
have problems with, and drugs existed, but there weren't like those type of things that were really much of a concern. And we lived on a ranch 5 miles
Right.
south of town. My nearest neighbor was a mile away. You couldn't see a house in any direction other than town north, um, which I appreciate that experience.
Yeah.
But that was, I think that was a reaction to that. And so
Huh.
we got, the retreat was into the church and more into um, some of what was the opposite of what they viewed in society at that time. And so that really, that was the lens of my experience that framed how I looked at the world. And I just,
Yeah.
the options of things that my parents really care about or value are very religious in nature.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a compass outside of the church, or like, here are the other things that you can do to be able to coach.
Right. Yeah. It's,
My Go ahead.
I was gonna say it just feels like you're the most lost person who still has a guiding star, though. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
well,
Like you're just kind of you're here trying this, trying that, but there's still you may not be able to see it very well, but there was still this guiding star out there of like, okay, it's going towards coaching and helping people, but there's a lot. I mean, very varied in
yeah.
this.
Well, and I was going to say the one thing that was uniform throughout is my dad's passion for sport.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mom's there; she's very supportive, just a part
Yeah.
of it. But my mom didn't play sports. My
Mm-hmm.
dad wasn't good at sports ever. He said, I was like, Dad, because we were talking about like my high school basketball experience when I was like a sophomore. It's like, so did you play a lot when you were a senior? He's like, nah, I played a lot less. Because they wouldn't let seniors play JV, so I just roast
Oh,
coach all the time as a senior. Back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s, I mean, that wasn't a thing. And he would tell me the stories about how if you bought black Chuck Taylors, the coach would not play you.
what?
You had two options: white Chuck Taylors and black Chuck Taylors. He's like, you wanted to play, you buy the white Chuck Taylors. Otherwise, you can sit on the bench.
What?
Just crazy stuff like that, right?
Why? I don't know. I don't think I understand. Am I just okay?
Well,
Just the
who
whim.
knows?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. So you. That's funny. That probably still goes on today in some form or fashion. Oh, you don't want to buy these spikes? Fine,
100%.
then you ain't running. Yeah, it's that.
100%.
All right, so you get this dual degree. You almost get a minor in like 100 different things. You want to coach. So what's our first You graduate. What's our first foray into coaching?
I student taught in the fall of 2006.
Hmm.
Absolutely cured me of the desire to teach at the high school. It wasn't the kids. It was just like, I'm not coaching. Like coaching. I only coach like an hour a day, and I got to teach. I got to do. I
But you,
had 5 different preps.
but you had to have some understanding of that was going to be the life, right? I mean,
Yeah,
your dad's a teacher,
yeah,
but I guess it is different between I see dad doing it and then you actually in the muck
and
doing
I
it.
just every night I'd come home. I'd get done with school at 3:30. I'd come home, make my, go for my workout because
Mhm.
I'm lost emotionally. I'll tell you what, one of the most devastating times in my life is when I'm done with track
No sports.
and there's no sports. And
Oh
no one cares if you
yeah.
do sports. And
Mm,
no one else is
yeah.
doing sports. And I'm like, what do I do at 3 o'clock every day?
Right.
And
That's interesting.
girlfriend at the time was doing sports. She was on the
Hmm.
swimming and diving team and she was busy. She had stuff to do. So like I couldn't hang out with her. So I literally was just out grinding, running miles, running six,
Yeah.
7, 8 miles a day, coming home as soon as I'm done, shower, clean up, eat dinner, start working on my preps for the next day, grading
Mm.
all these papers,
Oof.
reading everything all the way till 10 o'clock, going to bed, waking up at 6 a.m., going to school. I mean, I just was like,
Yeah.
and I student taught for my throws coach in college. She was incredibly kind to give me that opportunity. And I loved working with her. So my experience with that was not bad.
Hmm.
But
Not for
I
you.
got to the end of that semester, and my girlfriend at the time was like, "So, you gonna get a job?" And I just kind of looked around. I was like, "The way it works, you get into high school teaching is you just throw your hat in a ring in very disparate geographic locations and
Right.
towns, and you get hired where you get hired." And I just at the time, I kind of told her, I was like, "I kind of like dating you, and I feel like if I leave town and move 8 hours away, it's going to end." And
Right.
so I was like, "I'll probably go to grad school."
Mm.
Didn't know why I was going to grad school. Still hadn't figured that out yet. I wasn't a GA anywhere. And so I go to my track coach and I was like, "Hey, can I volunteer?" He's like, "I've been waiting for you to volunteer. I know you're going to be a coach all this time." So, yep.
Wow.
So I did that.
This cracks me up.
I did that. Actually, if we go back, well, that was the summer after. The summer after that, I was working construction
Mm.
and the job finished and we were remodeling the dorms at South Dakota. And so I worked construction every single year to pay my bills.
Hmm.
Job finishes. I go to my foreman. I'm like, "Hey, I want to keep working." He goes, "Great. There's a job in Fargo. We're remodeling a Sam's Club. I'll get you on the crew up there." Great. Wake up at 3:30 a.m., drive myself to Sioux Falls, pick up the truck there with another guy, drive a 3-ton truck all the way to Fargo,
Mm.
start work at 8:30 in the morning, work till 3:30. Again,
Mm.
living in a hotel, no idea what's going on. So I'm grinding out 30, 40 mile an hour or miles per week, just running.
Hmm.
So what else
Hmm.
do you do with
Hmm.
yourself? And by the end of the week, they were like, "Okay, we're going to start doing overnights. We're going to start working when the store closes until 6 a.m. and you can sleep all day."
Oh, wow.
Hell no, I'm going back to Vermilion. So I went back
Hmm.
to Vermilion, called up my coach, and I was like, "Hey, I got work study. Can I work for you?" And he's like, "I've been waiting for you to
Huh.
ask." And so I started working there.
It's interesting that the describer you had there about, when you're done with athletics, what do you do? Because it becomes such part of your identity. I've had this experience with one family member, one boss mentor here at Gill, of kind of the same thing of retirement. You do this job for 30, 40, 50 years, and on Friday, it's your last day. Monday, you wake up and it's like, well, I don't go to the office. I don't call coaches. I don't, my father-in-law was a purchaser for Miller Lite. I don't go and check inventory, like just the things you've done for decades. What do I do? I never thought about that. I've thought about that for like elite athletes, meaning athletes who compete till they're 30, 35, and it's like, man, that's all you've been doing. And now Monday wakes up and you're like, well, you're not getting ready for a meet or whatever, sport you played. You're just a regular person. I never thought about it down to more, I'm gonna call it more normalcy of the college athlete, who's probably been competing since, middle school or high school, been doing sports. You go through college, you do it, you graduate, and on Monday, it's like 2 o'clock. It's like, well, I'm supposed to go to practice. What do I do? Even if you already got a job. Like I remember, I coached for 10 years before I came to Gill. I remember for the first year, 2 o'clock ish, being at my desk and like, well, I'm supposed to go outside. Like, what like I was just like itching, like, oh, I'm supposed to go to the sand pit right now. That's what are we doing? And it's a different world because your identity, your routine, everything is wrapped up into practice or staying fit or shooting baskets if you're a basketball player. It's all wrapped around that. And it's gone. And you made a great point. Different, take away our elites now, guys and gals who've been doing it, until they're 30 years old. For our college kids, when you graduate college, when you move into an apartment or you get a job, no one cares. No one says, hey, so what are you doing at 3 o'clock? Are you on the softball team? Are you running the local 5K? Or, no one cares. It's like, oh, you do that? That's cool. That's awesome, man. Great for you. No one, like, there's no identity to it at that point.
The slice of the population that ever reaches a national meet at any level in track and field
No.
is infinitesimally small.
Yes.
And one of the things that I still struggle with, I can't have a conversation with any of my neighbors, any of the guys at church, any of the guys anywhere else that I run into. They have no idea what my experience has been. The only other people are other coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a thin slice. You go to the coaches convention, what, 2,000 people there? There are 2,000 people
That's a great point.
in the world who understand what I do. And
That's
so like this small network of people, I think a lot of coaches are in group chats right now where we kind of, this little echo chamber where we talk to each other about what we do. And we all have our friends in the industry. And I know every industry is like that, but there are a lot more people working in business than there are in sport.
Yeah. I think something I've been thinking about a lot, what you just said there about the number of people that make it to a national meet is nobody. One, I've started several years ago at the NCAA championships when we hand out like the gifts and stuff, for you guys and guys that qualify, and I'll usually say, oh, so Jim, who all did you get here? And some coaches will say a lot, and I know they're not meaning it this way, but what they're saying, I always correct them now. They'll say, oh, I just got one, or I just got two, or I only got one, and I go, whoa, first of all, don't diminish what your athlete did. They got here. It's like, how many coaches don't have anybody here? That's a lot. So they'll take that away. And by the way, you got someone here. No one gets people to nationals. There's only a couple hundred that get to go every single year. And I wonder in track if we, because of nationals and because of winning, track meets have 20 guy winners every track meet, 20 gal winners every track meet. I wonder if we sometimes forget winning is hard. Qualifying for nationals is hard. When we have somebody on the podcast who went to Olympics, it's like, bro, you're in a fraternity that doesn't exist. No one. And then when they're some of them had 2, 3, 4 Olympics, and I'm like, you're whatever a unicorn of a unicorn is. And it's just amazing to me. You hit the nail on the head. No one goes to nationals. We think everybody does because we go to a conference and there's 2,000 of us, and so some form or fashion, all of us get a kid there. But in the reality, no one is having that experience. No one. It's really, really special.
But one of the things that I try to do with all of our kids is to reframe success from going to nationals to learning about life through sport. My job is to teach you how to be a successful human being. And those skills that we talked about, whether they're people skills, whether those or the skill of just struggling and struggling and struggling without any tangible reward, right? Because right now society says, if you didn't get a reward, you're a loser. It's like, man, like everybody's a loser at like every track meet. And then like, the higher you go up the line, there's only one Olympic champion. And guess what? They're probably only going to be an Olympic champion statistically one time.
That's right.
And that number means that everybody else below them's a loser. That doesn't make any sense.
It's ridiculous. Right.
Right. And so I think that goes back to figuring out how to value life experiences and understand how to frame what happens to you in a way that allows you to continue to move through life. Because a lot of people get stuck in this loop. I'm a failure. I feel bad about myself. I don't know what to do. I'm a failure. I feel bad about myself. I don't know what to do. And most of my freshman kids struggle with that because they were the big fish in the small pond.
Right.
They show up and they're no longer a fish on land.
Right.
They're not getting anything done.
Yeah. Yeah. The way I think about that is it's why I've never, unless I knew they were like, I had Larry Wade on the podcast. I knew he was a super stud hurdler and things like that. But I'd never ask a coach, like when you said you high jumped and you volunteered the information, but I would have asked you, like, oh, what was your PR? Like, because I don't care. I don't care
Doesn't
if you were a
matter.
7.7 high jumper or 4.7 high jumper. You still matter. It doesn't matter what you actually did, competition with, because there's so many variables, right? Genetics,
Yeah.
coaching, injury, etc. It's like, oh, I don't care what you actually did. I care that you're a coach now and what you're doing for young people. Yeah, it's really amazing. That's a great topic there. I love that. Okay, you try construction. Boy, as soon as you said that, I'm just not tough enough to do that. So anytime someone says they did construction, I'm like, oh, God bless you. I can't do that. You go back to South Dakota and you're like, all right, look, can I volunteer? I need to do grad school and let's do that. So what did you go in to do grad work? Maybe a little bit more targeted
History.
this time, right? Okay, good.
History.
Yeah, yeah. You didn't like walk around aimlessly in grad school, I hope. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of was aimless,
Oh,
like
geez.
I talked to the history department and I was like, I think I'm gonna do my master's. Are there any opportunities for he's like my advisor is like, I'll give you a GA spot. Cool, sounds good. Pays for 2/3 of my tuition, $6,000 stipend, like
Yeah.
just allowed me to, keep doing what I was doing, keep being financially solvent. So
Yeah.
I mean that was awesome. And I learned we talk about being a critical thinker.
Hmm.
I grew so much academically and as a person in grad school.
Hmm.
I mean, just that year and a half, like I learned way more.
How so? What do you?
I just like because they just throw you in the water and they're like, hey, pick a master's thesis topic. Well, what should I do? Whatever you want to do.
Ah,
And it was kind of like my parents
yeah.
throwing me in the college thing, being like, we're not going to tell you what to do. You figure it out.
Right.
And man, I struggled with that because I was like, just tell me what to do and I will jump through the hoops. And they were like, nope, figure it out. Same with a lot of those classes, right? And I had at this time a different mean girlfriend who liked to study. And if I wanted to hang out with her, it meant I studied. I got like a 4.0 my last semester of undergrad. Got like my GPA in grad school is like 3.7 because they don't just grade your stuff. They look at it and they're like, this is garbage. Go back and fix it until it's
Right.
okay.
Right.
And so like for the first time, I couldn't just eh, my
Yeah.
way through. I was forced to create something. And I lived, man, in the summers, I just lived in the GA office. I was there every day, 4 to 6 hours, just me and the secretary. I was just in there researching. And what I was researching, not that this is relevant in any way, shape, or form, but I was researching a political campaign in 1972 where a Democrat won the governor position in the state of South Dakota for the only second time
Hmm.
in state history. It hasn't happened since then either. His name was Richard Knipe. We had all of his papers in the archives. I literally read every book published ever on High Plains politics, South
Wow.
Dakota. Um, and it was kind of interesting. I was like, oh man, if you read everything, you know everything on the topic. You know what I mean? And for the first time, it was a little bit like I was finding the people that published the book,
Huh.
interviewing them and being like, tell me, where did you get this information? And they would be like, they would refer me to that. And it was rabbit holes. I
Yeah. Yeah.
learned
Yeah.
really, I learned to research. I didn't learn that in undergrad
Right.
because they would be like, find two peer reviewed journal articles. Like two, how about find everything on the subject matter ever in existence? Find a bibliography, find obscure people that were, part of the project. And like I was talking to Lucky Huber, who's the head coach at the University of South Dakota, about Ted Munster. Ted Munster was the guy who ran the campaign for Richard Knight back in 1972, who ended up running the foundation at the University of South Dakota, who the student union is named after. So it's kind of funny how all of these people are
Yeah.
together. And yeah, it was really interesting. I just learned and learned and learned and learned and learned and it was fun. You know what I mean? To actually learn for once in my life.
Two things. One, you said you got a 4.0 your last semester of undergrad. bravo, because I believe you said your first one was 2.2 or something like that.
Yeah,
So bravo. I
yeah,
appreciate. I like growth, so that's really cool. Two, did you do your thesis statement on this guy?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
My
wondered. Yeah,
thesis
yeah,
was written on this. Yeah,
yeah.
political
Did
campaign of Richard Knipe, in 1972, and then they went from a 2-year program to a 4-year program for the governor. So he was actually governor 3 terms.
oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
What does this almost fanaticism, like you went in, I like I said, one topic, and I just went all in, all the rabbit holes. I learned everything about this political campaign, this politician, how it happened, what happened, all the factors that led up to it, and all this kind of stuff. Is this starting to turn, any of that starting to happen in the track and field world? Like, are you
Yeah.
studying high jump and
Oh,
whatever?
oh, oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. At this time, Lucky had 2 GAs,
Mhm.
wound up getting married. Sam Pribble, who was a pole vaulter, we came out and vaulted at the Gill plant during
Yeah,
the summers. He and
yeah.
I would travel around, do stuff. I set my pole vault PR, boy, down in Nebraska. I forget which town it was in. I jumped 15-1. The week before that, my PR was like 13-6. And
So,
they,
so did you become a multi? Is that what you ended up being?
yeah, yeah, in college, I
Okay.
did the
Yeah. Okay.
decathlon.
All right. Yeah.
So I'm just traveling around. I'm the only other hobo who doesn't have like a full-time job doing stuff. So Sam's like, I'm going to all these track meets trying to jump 18 plus to make
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
USA's.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Derek was a big influence at that time. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for example, here's a great book. This is The Throws by Anatoly Bondarchuk.
Oh yeah.
So uh, Lucky would give this to Sam and be like, we're going to read it and talk about it as you're learning and educating, right? So at that time, I just said, hey, what books are you guys reading? And they would be like, oh, we're reading Theory of Training and Methodology by Tudor Bompa. And I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, cool. I go online, find an old edition, buy it for $1. I'd be
Yeah.
sitting on the bus grinding through this book. It's a 300-page book. It's a really thick book.
It's a heavy one.
And then I'd get done with it and I'd be like, all right, Lucky, let's talk about it. What do you mean you got done with it? It's only been a week. In grad school, I was reading 50
Oh yeah.
pages a week. So it was
Yeah.
way different. My Monday schedule was wake up at 7:30, go to McDonald's, have breakfast, read from 8 until 3. I'd eat lunch there too, just sit in the lobby of McDonald's. I
Wow.
couldn't do anything else and just read. Because every week you had, in our historiography class, you picked someone, and I picked Thucydides at that time, and I got a book that was like that thick, and I needed to grind through it. And so I learned to stop, because a lot of kids just want to watch TV. Well, I'm just grinding. Every week you read another 1,500 pages. This is incredible how much stuff you can absorb. So he gave me, and I forget who wrote the book, but it's a Canadian guy, like hurdling, right? And it was talking about,
Brent McFarlane.
yes,
I
yes, it
know
was that
exactly
book.
what book it is.
He
I
handed it
work
to me. I
I
brought
worked
it
with
back the
Brent.
next
Yep.
morning, and I was like, read the book.
Mm-hmm. That's
And so,
that's the Bible. I wish that was back in publication, because the best sprint hurdle book ever. And there's a lot of ton of good books out there, but Brent McFarlane's book, Transformation, transformed my coaching career. I got to work with Brent. It's Spiral Bound. You're talking about that one, right?
yep,
Yeah, yeah.
100%.
Amazing book. Love it. Love it.
But Lucky he'd start giving me books,
Yeah.
and he'd give the books to these other two, and they'd just never do anything with it. And he'd give me the book, and I'd bring it back the next day and be like, I'm done. Give me another book.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find enough stuff. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Eric Evely at this time
Oh
was
yeah.
doing his Canadian
Mm-hmm.
series of podcasts where he would
Yeah.
interview people. I
Yeah.
stumbled onto that and
Yeah.
started to listen to Tom Tellez, started to listen to
Yeah.
Taft, started to listen to Bruce Schexnayder,
Mm-hmm.
started to listen to, like, one of my favorite ones. Derek did some great interviews with the kid from Penn State that's throws guy now that threw with Dylan when they were together in Kamloops. But just like you start talking about Dr. B and like how they
Mm-hmm.
were doing stuff, and I just mind blown because I have no context, right? The coaches
Right.
that I have, Lucky and Gots, busy doing their jobs, not
Yeah.
not busy educating me. They just gave me the multis, or like, just go away and coach the multis. Here are 12 kids, go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I would bring Lucky, and I'd be like, this is what I'm doing. He'd be like, it looks good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to experiment with a bunch of kids. I had some
Yeah.
success. I had a lot of fun. And by the time I got done with that process, well, during the process, I kept going to Gots. Hey, Gots, I'm thinking about getting a job this next year. what do I need to do? And he'd be like, you need to network. And the conversation would end. Be like,
How do I
in
do
my head, I'm like, I don't know what
that?
networking means. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
He was like, we're going to nationals this week. So make sure you network. And I'm like, okay. So we go to nationals and I'd try to like, I'd see, Mike Cunningham there and I'd sit down and be like, hey, Mike. And nobody knows me. And he'd be like, hey. And I'd be like, I was, trying to start a conversation with these people. Nobody, I mean, the hard thing about networking, if you don't have an introduction or if it's not a social scenario, people are not trying to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, there's roadblocks there. Yeah. Yeah.
So I get done and I'm like, so
I
they're
think I
like,
networked.
yeah, I networked. And they're like, well, here's the jobs list. Go apply for a job. I applied for, 37 different jobs and I still
Yeah.
have all of my cover letters, all of my stuff. I got an interview at Black Hills State to be the
Yeah.
assistant. And they ended up hiring Travis Covey instead of me. And eventually I kind of had a conversation with Dickinson State, with the guy that's now the AD there, and they were killing it. Okay, so that's when they had their 3 year
Mm,
run of national
hmm.
championships. Derek Atkins, Trevor Berry, Aaron Clear,
Wow.
like all those guys. Derek's down at Utah Tech now.
Hmm.
Trevor Berry's down at Morehead State.
Yep.
Guys that went and did stuff at the World Championship, Diamond League levels, incredible guys.
Hmm.
Were at Dickinson. That didn't pan out, and I got an interview at Emory University. I'd never heard of it. It's a prestigious
Yeah,
D3
I
school.
was going to ask, did you, because you mentioned all these schools are kind of in that area. So you didn't just limit yourself to
Oh
that
no,
area? Yeah.
anything that
Yeah. Yeah.
popped up, I
Yeah. Right.
applied
Right.
for. You could go on here. I applied for every job.
Yeah.
I think Petros moved from UNO that year to Boise State. We both applied
Hmm.
for Boise State.
Yeah. Yeah.
They would never have talked to me because I was just a GA. But I did,
Yeah.
at the time, I didn't know
Yeah.
what I'm
Right.
qualified
Right. Right.
for or how any of
Absolutely.
the process worked.
And sometimes that's better, by the way, because then you don't put yourself in some box, to be real frank with you.
True,
Yeah. Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
I never would have applied for the job in Emory.
Yeah. Right.
D3,
Hmm.
so I got that job, and John Curtin, the guy who was the head coach at that time, said, I'm going to be in Omaha for juniors. Um, can you drive down and meet me?
Hmm.
Drove down. We ate at Ted's, grill,
Hmm.
and had a delicious buffalo hamburger or whatever, and we talked. And I don't remember exactly how the offer came, whether it was on the phone later or whether it was there, but I drove myself a couple hours back to Vermilion. And later on, he calls me up, I guess, and says, how would you like to be a coach here next year? And I'm like, I can do that. I could do that. And he's like,
Wow.
18.5. I will starve to death. I need more money.
Yeah.
And so he said, I'll see what I can do. Call me back 2 days later. He goes, how does 22,000 sound? And
Better than
at
better than
this point, it's
18.5.
August. It's like last week in July,
Hmm.
this week in August. I'm like, I got no other offers. I'm moving to Atlanta. And one of the
Wow.
things that I said to myself is I'm going to be willing to move wherever I need to move. Personal life doesn't matter anymore. I'm not going to not take a job because it's somewhere scary.
Yeah. Yeah. But Emory, and Emory's a great school, great
It is
campus. I mean, it's really cool. But Atlanta, that's different than
very.
Vermilion. I mean, like radically different. How did you adjust?
I was lucky enough. Every third year, we'd had family reunions on the Vahrenkamp and on the Moore side. And so you get connected with your first, second, third cousins. And it just turned out that my mom had some cousins that lived there and their kids, I had gotten to know them growing up. And it's like, don't David and Melita live down there? And so my parents got me their phone number. I called them up. I said, I'm coming down. I'm going to get a job. Can I crash on your couch for 2 weeks while I look for a job or look
Yes,
for a place to live? They
super
said,
helpful.
that'd be great. That'd be great. The wonderful thing about Melita is Melita is an immigrant from Peru. She got married to David, and they have helped family
Wow.
come over. It's a
Hmm.
very normal thing for them to do. Her
Hmm.
brother is a doctor at Duke now. He does
Wow.
throat stuff. And so they brought her parents over, her brother over, uncles and aunts and stuff like that. So to live in their house, they're like, oh, yeah, meets expectations, right? Not a big deal. So I moved in with them. It was kind of a crazy scenario. It was David and Melita, my mother's cousins. I don't even know how that works. Their daughter, her husband, and their daughter,
Holy.
right? So there were three, four, five, six of us living in a house. It was like a
Wow.
5,000 square foot house, 4 bedrooms up, six total, full basement. It was
Dude.
awesome. And
Yeah.
they didn't, this was 2008.
Okay.
They were realtors. Everything had just crashed.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, 08.
A
Yes.
year before that, they had paid off their house. They had paid off their business place.
Oh, wow.
They'd done, I think they had done 500,000 that year in net revenue. That's how much they'd made. And they put it all into just being, you know, sufficient in where they were at.
Wow.
And so I
So
moved in.
smart.
I'm looking at places. My $22,000 a month doesn't go anywhere or a
Mhm.
year. And after 2 weeks, Melita comes to me and she goes, "Hey, we don't want you to move out. We want you to live with us in exchange
Oh.
for rent. We want you to cook on Tuesdays and Thursdays for dinner. Just want to have it on the stove. We want it there when we come home. Don't care what it is. And we want you to mow the lawn and do stuff around the house."
Dude.
And I was like, done.
Yeah, it's like, yes, ma'am. Wow.
And I was commuting from Dunwoody, where they lived,
Mm,
down, which is on the north end of town up by Sandy Springs,
okay.
south all the way down 400 every single day in Atlanta. So I got to learn what that was all about. That was an
Oof.
experience. Paid $1 in tolls every day, 50 cents in, 50 cents back
Oh,
out. The
man.
only toll road, lucky me, in all of Georgia, is 400. As
This
you
is
go
your
into
commute.
downtown, that's the only toll road. Um, but but man, the kindness of them to
Absolutely.
facilitate what I was trying to do, and I
Yeah.
learned. They were like, "You're the pole vault coach," and I was like, "I pole vaulted. That doesn't mean I know what I was doing."
Wait, you pole vaulted and with Lucky and Derek was there. So
Yeah,
of course you
right.
know what you're doing.
Of course I know what I'm doing. I was a multi. I jumped 13, 5 3/4 at the conference meet one time. So I had an incredible group of people, and I was again just trying to learn and learn and learn and learn and
Mhm.
learn and learn and learn and making 22 grand a year. Um, they didn't have a huge demand on our time other than just be in the office at 10, be here until 6.
Mhm.
It seems pretty normal now.
Was the track the same place where it is now? Like
Yep.
right there attached to the swimming pool and
Yep.
rec area,
And
kind
that
of right
track,
there?
that track was one of the practice tracks for the 96
That's
Olympics.
right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
record
good point.
tan track. It's an incredible facility,
Yeah.
awesome place to be able to go and practice
Yeah.
every day.
No, it's a
Did
cool.
not know how good I had it.
Yeah, I'll say that is Emory's a little bit of a hidden gem. I don't know that a lot of people know Emory, but oh man, they've got a lot going on from facilities to just the school and the support athletics get. It's actually quite amazing there, and it's beautiful. I call it little campus, just all kind of built right there. It's a cool little campus. So this is your first full-time coaching job. Um, how I don't want to say how did you like it because spoiler alert, you're still coaching, but it's different when it's full time versus a GA versus volunteer versus coaching the middle school basketball team because now there's some of us will put higher expectations on ourselves. We see our athletes every week. We know we're getting a paycheck for this. So there, again, some expectations come from there. We have a boss that we have to report to as far as what recruits we're getting or not getting. Why didn't you pole vault this kid this weekend? You made him do the hurdles instead or whatever. How are you adjusting to like, okay, I'm a coach. I'm a full-time college track and field coach at what, 23, 22? You're young.
Well, 2008. Are you good at math? I'm not,
Yeah,
obviously.
no, and I went to school in Alabama, so no, I'm not at all.
I think I was 25.
All right, sounds good.
But no, I don't think anything really changed.
Okay.
From my perception, like, when I was on the team, I'd stay up late at night, chart everything, and try to figure out. And this was when I was in school.
Hmm.
Figure out what event should everybody be in, score the meet. I was trying to pull. Raceberry Jam was still doing all of their race
Yeah,
stuff.
that's old school.
Um, yeah, for the North Central Conference, and I was
Hmm.
trying to pull things in and calculate who's done what and what if they do these other events and putting things in. Like my senior year, I did the decathlon. I did the 110-meter hurdles. I did high jump, long jump, triple jump, javelin. I don't remember if I did anything else. I didn't run the 4x4. So if you think I did 10 events plus 5, so I did 15 events at the conference meet.
Hmm.
And that was the first time I ever triple jumped. I got fourth. Like I say long jump in there as
Yeah,
well. But
yeah, yeah.
like I wanted to do a lot of stuff. I wanted to
Hmm.
impact what was going on. And when I was at South Dakota and I was coaching, there was a kid named Jeff Seagren at the time who ended up coincidentally working for me as a coach later on. Put him in triple jump. That kid scored the second or third most points at the conference meet on the team. I was just a walk-on kid. And
Yeah,
I had
that's cool.
recruited him. He was best friends with the kids that lived next door to me in the dorm. Got talking to him and he's like, "Oh yeah, these are my athletic endeavors. Like, you need to transfer here. You need to come here." And this is when we were both on the team. Always have been recruiting people to be.
Yeah, yeah, you have. Yeah.
Um, and so we're always, so nothing really changed. I always was thinking about like building teams, putting people in great positions to be successful.
Hmm.
Um, I had two great decathletes there that year that, had like 400 or 500 point PRs. We went to the last chance North Central meet. Um, did incredible until we got to javelin. It would have been a 700 or 800 point PR. And we just did not throw javelin well.
Hmm.
Um, but I got to coach a bunch of stuff and no one cared. They put me completely in charge. They never monkeyed with anything that I was doing, and kids did well.
Hmm. You've shown a great proclivity to what I call unofficial coaching education. Coaching education to me is official and unofficial. Not one is more important than the other. Unofficial is, peers, books, doing your own studies, things like that. Official being the certificates, right? USATF level one, USTFCA, ALTIS, etc. Are you doing any of the certification route at this
Yeah.
point?
Yeah. So I went to, and you're involved in this story here. So I went to a level one school at, boy, it's a purple school in Missouri. What am I trying to say?
Truman State.
Yeah, Truman State. So I go to Truman State in this summer in between getting this job. I stayed at campground with I just convinced my best friend to come along. I was like, "Hey man, I'm
Uh,
going to this coaching clinic." And he's like, "Sounds good to me. I'll just sit in the library each day." And then we went out and ate and did different things in Truman, in the
yeah.
evening. And you were one of the presenters.
I was going to say, I taught that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
I
that was
taught
the
your
first one I
level
ever did.
one. Oh,
Yeah.
Jim, I just, you have overcome a lot, my friend. If I was your level one teacher. Holy cow, that's amazing. That's
But
really
that was the
cool.
first one I did.
That's special. That's really cool. I ended up doing 30 of those before, just work got too busy and really enjoy them. And I do, thanks for bringing that up and remembering that because it's special to me when I see coaches that I taught, it's a curriculum. There's not a lot of
Yeah.
leeway in there, but that's really, I really enjoyed my time as a coach, a level one teacher. I wish I could do it some more. That's really cool, man. Yeah, Truman State, man. That was out in the middle of nowhere. The Bulldogs. That was fun. That's really cool. I love that. Thank you for bringing that memory up for me. Okay, so you're doing level one. Any level two, and I guess we didn't have USTFCCCA then, or maybe it was just starting.
It might have been just starting about that
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. It's probably in
Because
its infancy then.
I got done at Emory and took a
How,
job
how many years
back
it?
in South Dakota.
How
I was
many
there
years?
1 year, 10
One
months.
year, and you go back to South Dakota. Why?
I was working construction during the summer. We were doing fixture setting at J.C. Penney's, building the back room and then putting things out there.
Wait, so you moved to Atlanta to Emory in August roughly, and then when season was up May or June, you then go back to do construction.
We did, but I worked construction on Lake Altoona, and we did a J.C. Penney's. Just have one of my teammates, his parents own a construction business. They do all the shelving for any shields whenever those get installed,
Hmm.
and all the fixture setting for that kind of stuff. And he was like, "Hey man, we're gonna actually be in Georgia. You want to work for our crew?"
Oh, okay, 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 okay. I got it. Yep.
So Tyler and I got on that crew. They had a house rented. It's crazy that people
Wow.
do this stuff in construction. We'd work all day, come back, and we just watch HBO shows and then sleep. I slept on the couch in the living room every night. Then we moved over to Birmingham. Once we got
Yeah.
that job done, I lived in a hotel there for a month. And then as soon as we got done with that, my friend Tyler and I had been talking. I was going to go back and do some more research. And he was like, "Hey man, I've always wanted to."
Were you definitely not coming back to Emory? Like
No, I was planning on coming back.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah,
It's a
yeah,
10-month contract, so I'm
yeah, yeah,
out
yeah,
in the
yeah,
summer.
yeah, yeah.
And he wanted to kayak down the Missouri. So we kayaked from Vermilion all the way down to Kansas City. And
That's
that was,
ridiculous.
I'm applying for jobs during this period of time too. And
But you're coming back to Emory as far as you're
coming
concerned.
back to
Yeah, yeah,
Emory,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Lucky calls me. This is always a funny thing because the way that this happened, Lucky calls me, goes, "Hey, Chris Bradford got the job at Western Colorado. Here's Tracy Hellman's phone number. you need to call him and tell him you're going to be in town tomorrow and you're going to interview for the job.
Hmm.
So I was like, I
Wow.
got nothing to lose. I called him up and he's like, yeah, hello, who's this? And I was like, my name's Jim Vahrenkamp. I've been working at Emory. Oh yeah, I know who are you, Jim? Who you are or whatever. And I said, I'm going to be in town tomorrow and I'm going to interview for your open job.
Did you really say that like that?
Oh yeah.
What did he say?
He goes, oh well, let me get some things together. Is it okay if I get you, an itinerary? Yep. So I drove up to Sioux Falls
Wow.
and interviewed for the job. It wasn't even open,
Yeah.
but okay, there's your first cue. That's what networking is.
Yeah. 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 A
So
little bit of gall though of to say, hey, I'm
I had nothing to lose.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And in
Yeah.
my opinion, too, Augustana was terrible. My senior
Yeah,
year,
yeah. Yeah, you're
my
not
senior
calling.
year, my friend Tyler scored more points than their team
Oof. Yeah.
at conference.
Yeah, yeah.
Tyler scored in the steeplechase 5 and the 10, and their entire team scored 15 points.
Right, right.
And
Yeah,
so I didn't have a lot of, it wasn't like this
yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. There is a little bit of situational, not awareness, but situational, right? Because like right now, how would you feel if someone called you if you had a position open and they said, "Hey, Jim, I'm Mike Cunningham. Oh yeah, I know you, Mike. Yeah, hey, so I'm in town tomorrow and I'm going to interview for your assistant job." I feel like you'd be like, "Cool, with who?" Because not with me, buddy. What are you talking about?
and I think that's the other thing too. It depends on what your network's like. If
Yes,
you don't
yes,
have
yes.
anybody that'll interview for your job, and this is the one thing, if I can give anybody advice, you need to have a short list.
Mm,
If you don't know what a short list is established relationships with people that you believe you can offer a better position to. Not
explain that.
people you wish would take your job.
Yeah, explain that. Explain that.
But for example, if I'm Jim Vahrenkamp, I've got a short list of throws coaches. I have a short list of distance coaches.
For your job,
For
for your future opening if it comes available.
correct.
Yes, yes,
So
yes,
when
yes.
it's
Yeah,
open,
yeah.
it's closed before it's open.
Good head coaches have that, and good assistant coaches who aspire to be head coaches have that.
Yes.
Like, hey, here's a staff that I would my dream staff, and then to your point, two or three because some don't want to move to where you are or they're happy where they are or whatever. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Don't get the job as a head coach and then be like, I got to fill a staff. What the frick, man? Who do I hire? Best just let me go look at the applications. Yeah, yeah. Good ones are prepared. That's exactly right.
And I would say everywhere that I've been, we've already had the staff filled. For
Hmm.
example, I'm thinking about, when I was at Queens, I knew my assistant was going to leave. I spent 6 months talking to people and
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
vetting,
Hmm.
feeling people out,
Yeah.
so that going through that, and especially at a private institution where there are no rules, you hire who
Hmm.
you want.
Right, right, right,
Doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be public for a certain amount of time. You don't have
right,
to interview a certain number of people.
right.
Anytime I went to my boss and I said, Sahai's going to leave, I want to hire this person. And she would even say, she's like, man, I appreciate
Yeah,
you have your staff built before anything
absolutely.
ever happens. Because there's always turnover at small schools. That's
Yeah.
natural.
Yeah, yeah. Don't be delusional and think that your staff's going to be the one that stays together for 20 years. Right, right, right.
Yep,
It happens, but that's again that unicorn out there.
it is.
For the sake of time, let's move forward a little
Sure.
bit. So you take that. Do you get that job? The job that you say, hey, I'm going to interview tomorrow.
I took that job at Augustana. I started and I just,
So what was that like to tell the head coach back at Emory? Because that's something we sometimes don't think about. I coached for 10 years and I was at five different institutions. So I'm certainly not going to wag my finger at people who leave and go on. I think you should go on to whatever you think is bigger and better for yourself, for your career. I have that same philosophy with athletes too, which sometimes conflicts with our coaches, but that's okay. But we forget that you talk about networking. Well, don't burn bridges either. How did you handle?
yeah,
Uh,
I don't burn bridges.
Okay, I thought you
I
were telling me,
called,
oh, you burned a bridge. I was like, oh
no,
no.
no, I called John and I just said, hey, it's 8,000 more a year. My rent is going to be like $250 a month. But the thing that I don't know if I even said, I got to know the Southeast when I was down there.
Hmm.
The number one thing I would recommend to people as they look at jobs, go away from where you've been. Go
Yeah,
out, experience something different, different town, different cities, the way the
agreed,
track meets are run
agreed.
in a different place. Because I will say this, I feel like when I interviewed for the job at Queens, my familiarity with the region
Ah,
helped me out so much. I knew people, I knew where the meets were, I knew how it worked.
Hmm.
It was an easy way to, circle back around and come
Yeah.
back into there. And I knew people that I could
Yeah.
reference and I could show that I understood the area.
That's what I was, yeah, I mean, I don't think, I think I failed to tell you this before during our pre-interview. I don't do any research beforehand. So what I know of you is what I know of you. And then we explore that, right? It allows me to stay curious. So I knew you went to Queens, but one of my concern was, that's why I asked when you were applying for all those jobs, I was like, did you just, I was concerned because I agree with that too. Go away from where you grew up, go away from where you're familiar, go put yourself in unfamiliar places and learn and fail and get better. So I was concerned about that, but then I knew Queens was in there at some form or fashion. So okay, so you did call coach back at Emory and was like, hey, appreciate everything. Yeah, I'm not, but I, took this job and here's why. And that's good. I hope, I don't know if that's the case. I don't know. I'm not saying it's not the case, but I hope that's the case. The professionalism of our profession of, hey, if you accept another position, give the coach the respect immediately so that they can prepare. They don't have a hole in their staff that they've got to fix, and hopefully they have a list of 3 to 4 of people they can immediately call. But don't treat them how you would want to be treated. If
Sure.
you're a head coach one day and someone leaves you, you would certainly hope someone's letting you know immediately. So I appreciate that. All right, so you're back home-ish. You're back in this, up here in this upper Midwest. How many years there, and what's next?
So 3 years there,
Okay.
Tracy and Chris Bradford had really changed the philosophy and really doubled down on getting some good kids. And so I walked into what externally didn't look very good, but man, that we had a lot of really great stuff coming.
Okay.
And I, thinking about networking, and this is a year on, we had some success with some kids. And the next year I was at the conference multi that year, and Chris Parno was there.
Hmm.
And I was like, what are you doing, man? He's like, I don't know. I just got back from student teaching in Bolivia,
Yeah.
knock out this semester. I was like, why don't you come be a GA for me next year? I need a GA.
No way.
Oh, yeah. So Chris lived in my basement, kept his drum set in his
No
room. He let me play that when he was
way.
at class and stuff like that. And so he was a GA with me at Augustana for 2 years.
I'm
And he knew the job was going to come open at Mankato. So he worked really hard at that. And
Wow.
we won conference championships. We've never won anything. So we won women's indoor, women's outdoor. We won women's NCAA national championship across country. So success, success, success. Looks like I know what I'm doing. I don't. We're just really motivated. We're recruiting really hard. And there was a guy named Scott Simmons who had a lot of success at Minot State,
Yeah.
to Virginia Intermont after that. And
Yeah.
then when Virginia Intermont closed, he went to Queens.
Queens, that's
I
right.
followed him because when he was at Minot State, I was at South Dakota School of Mines, and we are in the
Mm,
DAC 10 at that time.
right.
So I knew who Brad Ty and the Ty brothers and all of them were. Um, I see that he leaves the job. I see the job gets posted on my birthday, January 27th. Boom. Immediately send in my resume. I called the secretary
Really?
every single week until I got an interview. And I was in the second round of interviews.
Why that school? Why?
It was just a job.
Yeah.
Not no particular interest. It just was out there and I wanted an interview. So I called Miss Robbie every single week. Miss Robbie, what's going on with the job?
Yeah.
Oh, what's up, Jim? She knew me by the
Yeah,
time.
so she knew.
And they did a first round of interviews. Didn't like anybody there. Did
Oh,
a second round of interviews. My eventual assistant, Sahai Donacho, was uh, she interviewed the day after I did, last one, and they offered me the job while I was out at the national championships in Pueblo
wow.
with Tracy and the rest of the kids, and I took the job. But my
Yeah.
experience at Augustana,
Yeah.
they have the freedom for the speed power group and to just grow it and try different things, which I would argue are foolish things, but sometimes you got to learn by
Yeah.
doing. And you going back to formal education, when I went to Queens, I was the time where I took my first coaches association
Ah,
sprints and jumps or sprints,
yeah.
that foundation class. And
Yeah.
it was like, wow, have not been doing this.
Yeah, I think I like when you say, trying things, doing things, and looking back now, some foolish things, because I feel like if after you coach for some amount of time, and not necessarily a lot, 5 years, 10 years, if you don't look back at some of the first things you
Oh, yeah,
did and
sure.
cringe a little bit. It's like, well, I'm not sure you're growing then if you're still doing the same things, or because I doubt anybody's coming right out the gate, no matter who was your college coach or whatnot, all that stuff. I'm not sure right out the gate anybody is coaching good when they first start. You're trying to figure out your own identity, and that means a lot of accidents. And so if you don't look back and be like, oh man, what in the world was I doing? I'm just not sure you're growing. So I appreciate you saying that. I love Chris Parno. That's so interesting. I'm toying around with the idea of having some kind of button during these interviews to hit that signifies Gill Podcast alums. Because Chris was like, I don't know, maybe 11, number 12. He's an OG. He was one of the first ones. And as you know him, today, you could see he would have absolutely jumped at it when I first started this back in 2020. So I appreciate Chris a lot. And lived in your basement. That's pretty cool. I bet if I go back and listen, I guarantee that's part of his story that he told. Yeah, that's really cool. So I mentioned Emory and how beautiful that campus is. You go to Queens, another really beautiful camp, and now you're in North Dakota. You have an attraction for really attractive campuses. So you go to Queens, beautiful, right in Charlotte. You kind of drive down that residential area, and then it opens up. A lot of greenery is what I remember there. How was it at Queens? And this is your first head coaching job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
how was
mean,
that?
Queens was a great opportunity to develop my so as a head coach, it's wildly different than being an assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
I spend way more time now, and even when I was at Queens on the macro,
Mm-hmm.
I hired my friend Jeff. He coached sprints, couldn't find a throws coach, so I coached throws.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Sahai, who was a distance coach. And we didn't really see each other. Throws coach, like throws facilities over here,
Right.
sprints jumps is over here, distance, who knows? And we had no facilities.
Right.
Um, and that was an opportunity for me to go out and to identify facilities, build relationships, get us a place to do things,
Right.
um, and really establish what you believe. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And start establishing staff network, building through all of those different things.
Yeah.
So we never ended up with any facilities. COVID was a real struggle. We had an asphalt track. What's crazy, we went to nationals. I had a girl that was a national champion in the short hurdles, girl that was runner up in the multi, and we did it all on an asphalt track. And that's what a lot of people think, well, we got to have the nicest. And my kids even thought this, we got to have a nice facility. And I'm like,
Yeah.
here's the deal. Your body doesn't know from a neurological standpoint, if you're wearing spikes and you're on rubber, if you're wearing flats or you're on an asphalt track. Running
Right.
fast is about limb movement and neural recruitment.
Huh.
And I would argue having a girl that came in as a 14-1 hurdler that ran 13-2, right?
Yeah.
Body must not have known
All
at
right.
any
All
point
right.
during that time.
Yeah.
And so like now being able to do it without facilities, when I had the opportunity to come here, and they're like, we only have an 8-lane 300-meter indoor track, and you can only use it from 1 to 5 every day. And I'm like,
Right. You're like,
what are the impediments?
I'll suffer through.
I was like, I don't care if it gets negative 100. That sounds fantastic.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, go back to Queens real quick. I have three
Yeah.
questions that I love to ask first-time head coaches. One is because now you have perspective. You got years behind you. Were you ready to be a head coach?
Well, I might have to ask you, what does that mean? Because I don't know if there's a ready. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Okay. That's
I
fine.
was ready.
Yeah.
I was prepared to, make all of the decisions, to be responsible for that stuff. I made mistakes along the way. We
Right.
all
Right.
do.
Right.
But from an aptitude standpoint,
Yeah.
I was unhesitantly ready to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I was real like I didn't want anybody else telling me what I could or couldn't do. And
Right.
not that I couldn't do that, but I think if you really, I have a lot of personal belief in my abilities and skills.
Mhm.
And that was an opportunity to try that stuff. So at some point, you work for somebody and you learn some stuff. And we always know everything, right? When we're the assistant, and then you get to be the head coach. And that's when you learn what you don't know. And that's a growth opportunity.
Yeah.
Growth is by definition uncomfortable.
That's
If
right.
you're comfortable, you're not growing.
That's right.
And so for me, I was ready to be uncomfortable. And I was very uncomfortable after like, and going back, remember I said I was never going to put personal life, and I didn't want that to hold me back.
Right.
And I wanted to move as much as I could. I wanted to do what I could. So 29 years old, I get the opportunity to be
So
a head
young.
coach.
All right. So my second question for new head coaches, because I don't think I know from being the podcast host, talking to coaches 24/7. We overall, some coaches, some head coaches do a very good job of this, but overall, we don't do a very good job of helping our assistant coaches become future head coaches, meaning we're very controlling sometimes. Again, this is just a big general swath. So we don't want to give up equipment or scheduling or budgeting or academics or all the other billion hats that you wear as a head coach. We don't want to give that up to our assistants. And so when they become head coaches, it's the first time they realize, oh crap, I didn't even think I have to meet with the academic counselor about the school, about the team, things like that. So these questions are very similar. I'll start with the first one. When you got to Queens, you nailed it. You said, hey, being the head coach is different than being the assistant coach. That is different. You're more macro, right? Not just siloed on your event group. You're also siloed on your event group, by the way, while also doing the macro. It's kind of you're doing two jobs, if you will. What did you think was going to be hard? What was something you thought, oh, I might struggle with this as the head coach, but end up being easy?
Oh, so I'll go back and I want to answer your first question.
Yep.
Because I struggled finding a job and I got told to network and I had nobody explained it to me. Just intrinsically, I have always wanted to help people move on. And I have always wanted to offer people exposure to so that they know about. So any assistant that I ever had when I was at Queens, the goal is you're going to learn everything about everything.
Oh, so
So when
good.
you go to the next place, you understand all this. So one of my
So good.
coaching tree, Aaron Combs just took over at Indiana Purdue Fort Wayne
Mm-hmm.
as a head coach. He called me the other day, and he's not just trying to be nice. He goes, I just want to say thank you. He goes, every step of the way, you have prepared me for everything before I
Oh,
had ever gotten to it. I
so
understand
good.
budgeting. I understand fundraising. I understand dealing with administration. I understand home meets, meet administration, how we do all this stuff. And
Yep.
my AD said to me, this is him speaking. She goes, you have been so far ahead of the curve. It's just really been us getting to a place where we can hire you. And I've always tried to do that. And I
That's so
pushed kids
good.
out to like different jobs and for a while there, I tried to position myself where everybody knew me who was looking for a distance coach. And we always had volunteers come in every year. We always pushed out those volunteers.
Right.
So I've got a coaching tree group chat that we're in now
Oh, I love
that
that.
we all stay connected and we all talk about what we're doing and share
For
advice.
for our profession, we need more of that. We have too many assistant coaches who become head coaches who are just clueless. Not their fault. They were never exposed to it. They were told, go coach sprints, go coach throws, don't talk. I'll do the rest of that, right? Because on one hand, the head coach in that sense feels like they're supporting their assistant coach. It's like, look, man, don't worry about that stuff. You just coach. And then that guy goes and gal goes becomes a head coach, and now they're 3 years behind the curve, learning meet management, scheduling, budgeting. How do you work with your oversight AD? They're just so far behind. They'll get there. They're all smart individuals. People who become head coaches are very smart individuals, but they're so far behind when it's like, man, you could have, use a baseball term here. You could have put that kid on first base to become a head coach.
Yeah.
Instead,
Yeah.
they're on the on bat circle here. I mean, come on. So I love
One
that
of,
you
one of
do
my
that.
one of my favorite expressions is Lucky said this to my wife the other day, who was our jumps coach. He said, those people that are born on third base who feel like they hit a triple, that really frustrates me because they don't understand what they were just given.
Mm-hmm.
But like
Mm-hmm.
one of the stories to just feed into this, last
Mm-hmm.
year I had a graduate assistant named Olivia Lane, and she came to us from uh, Oregon. She was I forget which Oregon small NAI school it was, and then she was at Ashland for a year when Judd Logan passed away, and that
Mm-hmm.
was a tough year. And she came here because coincidentally my distance coach is from
Oh,
Ashland, and my
yeah.
throws coach is from Ashland.
Oh,
Not
wow.
by design, coincidence.
Yeah.
And she worked here for a little bit and then she was like, after a year, she's like, I don't want to do this. She tried to leave. She went and got a job with the Forestry Service. I kept talking to her. I was like, you need to get back here. You need to finish your degree and get
Mm,
a coaching job. You only were here for 8 months. You can't tell me you don't like it because it takes 2 to 3
right.
years to develop friendships and really feel like you're in a place. So she comes back, and I'm working with her on, all right, now we're going to go get a job. And Tom, our distance coach, comes into my office and she and I are sitting there and she's crying, and Tom just turns around and walks back out of the office. I was grilling her with interview questions and
Mm,
just trying to prep her for the interview, kind of break down some of the emotional barriers that she had so
right.
she was ready. She's got her dream job. She's at Montana State right now. Her athlete jumped
Uh,
649 last week. And she's helped that girl jump, 20 centimeters further. She's doing an incredible job. That was the job she said she wanted when she came here. She's like,
mm,
I want to work there. And so, like, just being able to get her back out of the Forestry Service, get her back over here, and then
right.
push her back out into the world where she can do a great job has always been my goal.
So, Jim, we're not born with a lot of things. We're born with some things. You started today's conversation off talking about nature and nurture. So we are born with some things, but a lot of things are learned, especially in our adult life. And two things that you have just expressed are not common. I wish they were. No one talks to more track coaches in depth than this guy right here, right? So this is I'll put my hand on a Bible. This is not common, and I believe it should be. One is that preparing your assistant coaches for future head coaching jobs, and two, putting what's best for you as the head coach to the side and doing what's best for them. So it's not best for you to have an assistant coach leave you, right? I mean, that puts you, I don't care if you have a list of three and you already know who the next person up and all that kind of stuff is. That's still a learning curve for that new assistant. It puts you behind. But you look at that young lady as an example and say, hey, you know what? It's not better for you to go become forestry. Let me help you and let's work on this and come back here and get your degree. Like, where's that modeled from? You had to have seen that somewhere, whether
Yeah.
it's teachers, parents, clergy, best friends' parents. I don't know, a TV show that somewhere.
I don't know if I ever directly saw it modeled anywhere, but I will tell you this, who I am, who my personality is it's two different things. I love puzzles and not big flat sheet puzzles. My job is a puzzle.
Mm-hmm,
Anywhere you work is a puzzle. The people that
mm-hmm,
you work with are a puzzle.
mm-hmm.
The athletes that you work with are a puzzle. The facilities are a puzzle. So I like tearing that apart, figuring out how it all fits together. And number two, I love providing for people, whether that is people outside of our program where we provide an incredible meet, an incredible opportunity that may be something that I didn't have. And it is very driven by maybe what I missed out on or I wish that I had. Um, which is kind of, I don't know if that's weird to think about that I'm trying to make up for what other people didn't do,
But, but what's
in my experience.
but what's cool about that though is you're not doing it so that now Jim as
So,
a 42-year-old, it's so that others don't have that same experience
yes.
that you had. That's what's interesting there.
And I don't really care about awards. I'm not driven by that. I am intrinsically driven by helping people.
Mhm,
And that goes to helping you get your next job if you come
mhm,
work for me. If you're
mhm.
an athlete, helping you achieve your goals. Um, and also being hard on people and having the belief that the way that the world works is not the way that you're being told that the world works.
Hmm.
So right now everybody says, "Oh, nothing should be hard. You should never be sad." Hell no. Being
Mhm,
sad is part of the cycle. Okay. And so I want you to be able to navigate that, learn what it looks like, and be able to move beyond it. There are
mhm.
many people who are wounded emotionally who never move beyond that wound.
True.
And what an incredibly, to me, that's a tragic story.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot in literature that's about that, right? And
Yeah.
some type of emotional wound that nobody ever moves beyond. But I want to be able to give people tools to be successful in life, whether
Hmm.
that's assistants, whether that's athletes, whether that's other people that I work with. And there are a lot of people in this world that I bump into who don't necessarily like our interaction because I do not subscribe to the status quo as truth. And I would say that the success rate of the people that I deal with indicates that what we're doing is different. And I also think that it's right. There's a beautiful book. If you haven't read this, The Anxious Generation, written by a professor at Columbia University, talks about the why of where we are right now with dealing with young people. And it's probably a huge buzzword, but it's tied to phones. And it's tied to going through puberty with phones and not being able allowed to fail and struggle and learn social cues and all that stuff. And so, like, my goal is whatever it is, it's going to be phones, it's going to be MTV, it's going to be rock and roll, it's whatever it is. It threatens every generation.
Right.
But the goal is there have got to be people out there helping people anchor themselves in truth where they can move on and be successful as adults and as humans. And that's what we're trying to do. Not even track and field, we're just trying to do that through our sport.
Are you doing or have desire to do that kind of helping others? You're doing it on your, I'll call it micro level, meaning right there where you are at University of North Dakota with your athletes, with your coaching staff. I'm sure you're doing that with your athletic department teammates as well. The guy like you doesn't just pigeonhole and say screw softball, screw hockey.
Yeah.
We're only gonna, I'm only focused on track here at UND. Are you have you started doing anything outside of the University of North Dakota ecosystem for our sport? Meaning, speaking at clinics, helping out with the local, and if you haven't, do you have desires or thoughts of doing that?
Yeah. And I've spoke at the convention before.
Mm-hmm.
I've done coaches association entry level classes taught
Yeah,
there and
good, good,
expressed
good.
interest in those. We do our
Yeah,
state stuff. I've been to Kansas, I've been to
good,
North Dakota, I've done those. I've spoken to the Nebraska state one,
good.
any chance that I get.
Do you speak mainly on the X's and O's or the other side of track?
Most people want you to speak on the X and O's
Yeah,
because they're
yeah,
like, hey, talk to me about high jump. And I'm like,
yeah,
let's talk about dealing with high jumpers.
yeah.
You know what
That's
I
what
mean? And
that.
communicating to them once X's and O's, there's truth, right? It's all
Yeah,
physics. It's
yeah,
not your opinion.
yeah.
But the real question is, how do you manage those people?
That's what I was going to encourage you. As I've gone to track clinics, my whole life. So 20, 30 years of it now. And it's better today. Back in the day when I was coaching, so 2000, 2005, you'd go to a clinic and 95% of the topics were, how to teach high jumpers, how to release in the shot put, whatever else kind of stuff. And 5% of it would be about culture or team management or professional development, things like that. Now it's about maybe 75-25. We're doing much better. USTFCA, the convention, we have many more now topics on those kind of things. When we go to like Texas Track and Field or Ohio Track Clinic, there's more of it. But as we've been exploring this over maybe the past 6-ish months here on the podcast and through Twitter, for social media and stuff, it's almost, and it's hard to say this as a guy who's a big coaching education guy, right? Like level ones, like three or four level twos, all that kind of stuff. Maybe the X's and O's are the easy part. And again, that's so hard to say as a guy who was so enthralled on how do you coach high jumpers better and sprinters better, hurlers better. And the other stuff, culture, team management, professional development, network. To your point, go network. You're like, well, what the frick does that mean? Like maybe someone needs to talk about how you properly network. I just want to challenge you. Like the next time someone calls you up and says, "Hey, I want you to speak at the such and such clinic on high jump," maybe you push back a little bit, like, "Hey, you know what? I'd like to explore. I'd like to explore how you coach high jumpers, not the high
Yeah.
jump, the high jumpers." Because I think that's when you look at successful coaches, yourself included in this here now. When you look at longer term successful coaches, not just necessarily a coach who has one good athlete, which again, I'm not taking away, that's amazing, but coaches who continually win their conference or top two and send, kids to nationals every year, they talk more about how they connect with the athletes and their coaching staff and less about, oh yeah, I'm a real guru in this event.
I will tell you, when I interviewed for this job, the guy that hired me has since moved on, which he was more than willing to kind of share what that experience was like. And I spoke about the need to win hearts and minds.
Hmm.
They're like, what are you going to do when you get here? And he said that the AD was on the call, Bill Chaves, And I just said, the most important thing is getting people to work together. And then the X's and O's, we'll take care of that. But like winning hearts and minds. And they had a very fractured experience. And he said within like 3 minutes of you starting to talk, Bill texted him on the side and be like, we need to hire this guy. And
Wow.
a previous call he'd been on for the same position, coach is going on about anaerobic training and VO2 max and stuff like that. And Bill is texting him on the side, being like, shut this guy up. We got to get going. Like, what is this guy even
Oh,
talking about?
yeah, yeah,
And then I think we all miss that, right?
yeah, yeah.
Because when you come in, you're working with humans. You got
Amen.
to remember you're working with humans
That's
and
right.
you got to connect with people. If you can't connect with people, the X's and O's don't matter.
Right. Jim, that's a good place to stop right there, man. That's our time. But I have one more kind of, you're going to provide the outro maybe here for this. You are obviously a long-term thinker. You're not just thinking about what the rest of 2025 is bringing or even what 2026. You're already thinking 2027, 28, 30, 35, et cetera. As you sit in your seat right now today as the head coach, director of track and field there at University of North Dakota, what's got you excited about the future here for the Fighting Hawks?
Oh, the people. I mean, that's a silly way to the opportunity that I have here to work with. And the limitations here don't exist like they have before. So we can attract more people from a facility standpoint. We can impact their lives from a travel and a gear standpoint. And like this place, the sky is the limit. We had a young lady when I started here.
Hmm.
It was like a 17:30 5K girl. Ran the 20th fastest 10K this year in NCAA Division I history.
Dude.
Nothing changed, man. We've just been pouring into her life
Yeah.
and letting her achieve her dreams. She broke the U23 Canadian record. Um, and it's just recruiting, that kind of stuff. Come in, meet the people.
Yeah.
I'm not selling you the facility, meet the people. They're going to tell you why you need to be here. And if you go somewhere else, that's fine. But the people that we have here and the buy-in, the team culture, could not be happier.
That's awesome. I love that for you. That's really cool. Jim, my friend, the most valuable thing you can give me is your time. You're in the middle of track season. You got conference coming up, nationals, and you're in the thick of it all the way there with that. So I'm just so grateful for your time, man. It's amazing. We do this 52 times a year every Monday. And during track season, when people say yes, I'm just so humbled because I'm like, dude, I know you're busy. I know end of summer would be better or fall would be better. And so just so grateful for that. And just, your experience is valuable. This is again why we did this podcast, was to learn the different steps. I just go back to this like aimless, and I don't mean aimless necessarily, but just like all these different things. But there was a North Star, and I'm beginning to think that Dad put that North Star there. I really do. I just kind of think about his experience with you from day one, if you will, and the support. And I consider the laissez-faire, the hands-off of you going to college as support.
Yeah.
I don't consider coddling support. So I consider that support. It's an amazing story about family and belief and not giving up, dude. You had plenty of opportunities to give up. That second trig class, easily be like, look, man, this maybe college ain't for me. Maybe I go do more construction. Maybe that's a noble profession. So no judgment there. And you just kept at it. You had the right people in your time at the right time and right place that said the right things to you. And I think that's just a great lesson for all of us to learn. So I'm really thankful for you just being your most open and authentic self with us today, and really, really grateful for you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you again for being here. Join us, every Monday. We do the long form here with amazing coaches from around the country that are just doing amazing things. And I want you to take heart. It's one thing about the journey of like if you want X's and O's, Jim's journey of like, okay, went to school here, went to grad work here, went to Emory, went back there, then it goes to Queen. Like there's one thing, but the real lesson I think is the people. It's hard for me to say this, but I'm getting more and more like this being a motto of like the X's and O's are the easy part. What do you do outside of that? And I think if you go back, in our library here of 300 plus coaches, I think if you look at the ones who are the most successful, however you want to define that, they're the ones who they're working with people. They're not coaching sprints or coaching throws. They're working with people and young people, and that's extremely valuable. So thanks again for being here today. Join us next Monday. We'll have another great coach here, and join us every day on Tuesday through Sunday for 10 to 30 minute X's and O's type TED Talks of track and field, if you will, by coaches for coaches. The Gill 1918 project that we just started, that you guys are making very successful. I appreciate you guys listening to that and sharing with your network and helping others receive the value of what these coaches are bringing to the table. So thanks again. We'll see you next week. See you guys.